Hello and welcome to the news at 9. I'm Mahendra Raghunath and these are your headlines.
We are sick and tired that people must rig an election.
As vote counting continues, various small political parties, including Black First, Land First, the African Content Movement and the APC, vow to challenge the legitimacy of the 2019 national elections. Meanwhile, the IEC orders a vote recount at Ward 4 in Huhudu near Freiburg in the northwest after opposition parties raise concerns regarding possible vote rigging. Staying on election news, at least 2 people accused of disrupting elections at Guela village outside Giyani have been granted bail. Let's go now to the results center in Pretoria, where senior political reporter Mzwandile Mbeja is standing by. Good evening, Mzwai. It's been quite an intense day of vote counting. What's the situation at the moment?
A very good evening to you, Mahendra. Indeed, this has been an intense day and, of course, a very long day indeed of counting. But we do make progress. I mean, when I look at the leaderboard, we are currently at 64 of the votes declared, Mahendra, so which means progress really is being made. And currently, I think the ANC is still ahead by about 5,681,000 votes, followed by the DA with over 2 million, and of course the FF with about 982,000. I think the IFP and the Freedom Front Plus 5 and 6 respectively. So it's been quite a situation here, Mahendra. Perhaps I can just take you back earlier around, I think around 5, when the small parties, most of them are not necessarily represented in Parliament. Remember, we have been reporting that this election is being contested by 48 parties. So most of those parties, Mahendra, decided today to club together to say they reject this election, so they want a rerun. In their view, they feel that there have been irregularities, and those irregularities necessitate that this election be rerun. But it's quite interesting because, I mean, when you look at their entire number, because it's quite a number of them, ATM, Forum for Service Delivery, and AIC, quite a number of what you would consider as small parties. So they perhaps don't even make, at the moment, even 100,000. So they feel that irregularity, perhaps that relates to double voting that the IEC is investigating, is sufficient to warrant a rerun. So we did speak to Musi Maimane, the leader of the DA, to say what is his view, given that his colleagues feel that way. He basically said, you know, he agrees with the audit into some of these issues that have arisen, but to go for a rerun perhaps will be to take it a bit further. So he says we need to first understand the scale of the problem, if the problem is that big. But IEC earlier, I mean, have been really saying the problem has not really been that big in terms of affecting the results that have come out here. They kept repeating, saying what you see on the leaderboard are clean results, so they are verifiable. You can have the opportunity to also check how they went about to reach all those results. So we expect that this process will be concluded perhaps sometime tomorrow, the process of declaring these votes, but the official announcement of the results, if let's say the court challenges which have been threatened by those parties is not launched, so we expect the official announcement of the results to happen on Saturday, and that's where we'll then know who got how many seats in Parliament. Remember, Mahendra, Our electoral system basically is one of the parliamentary systems. So where we basically vote for parties, and then the members that we elect go to parliament and they elect the president, and then from there the president gets inaugurated, and from there he then delivers his State of the Nation address. So it's still a long way here. We are currently standing at 64.4. So it's quite slow, but I guess we'll get there, Mahendra.
Well, thank you very much indeed for that update, Mzwai. 64.4% of the votes have already been counted. That was our senior reporter, political reporter, Mzwandile Mbeje. Well, smaller parties who contested the elections this week are unhappy with the attention the bigger parties like the ANC, the DA and the EFF are getting at their expense. Tonight at the IEC Centre in Pretoria, they made their voices heard.
We are sick and tired that people must rig an election. We cannot allow a situation. This is not a banana republic. And we will never allow that this country must turn into a banana republic. We will approach the courts of this country. But this election, we can never, ever, and we are not supporting this election, because you can see that it is a rigged thing that nobody will ever accept. We will go to the courts of law and we will challenge it.
We believe that in South Africa, there has been a decision to move towards a coalition government led particularly by the ANC, the EFF and the DA. And it seems that in order for this to be made possible, parties who are pro-black, parties who represent a different agenda, parties who are not in the pockets of white monopoly capital are being cut out so that they do not get the sufficient representation in parliament, so that they may be able to present a different alternative to the people of South Africa.
This is a decision taken by a collective body. If you are looking for evidence, as usual in South Africa, whenever we have grievances, we are not taken serious. We are told that we don't present any evidence when there is clear and irregular processes, which IEC itself, by the way, has agreed to some of those irregular processes. So the other aspect of it is, as smaller parties, we were never covered anywhere. Television in terms of SABC, the radio aspect of it, television aspect of it, all license holders of television in South Africa refused to cover all the smaller parties.
But we were together during the IEC briefing, where all political parties accepted the IEC's commitment, one, to go and investigate the allegations of, the indelible ink, and that they will come back to us before they make the final announcement. The IEC informed us about the arrest that's being made, and I thought everybody was happy with that. I certainly feel that we should give them the space to go and investigate and then come back to us.
Well, small parties have been battling it out for a slice of the electoral pie. But with 48 parties contesting the election, some major casualties are expected. The three major parties, the ANC, the DA and the EFF, are dominating the political landscape.
The leaderboard paints a worrying picture for smaller parties. COPE and the UDM among those bleeding votes.
We are worried. Every party will be worried when you see the board. But we still hope that there are still other stations that are still coming.
We're not worried as yet because we believe that the counting started late. So the counting is still carrying on.
Showing dwindling support on the national and provincial ballot, analysts believe they should be worried.
I do think that for smaller parties, the reasons might be very specific for some and some may be general. COPE specifically. The long battles between the leaders, Moswale Kota and Bazima Shlowa, and the failure to define their policy and their philosophy, as well as the more recent stance they took on the land issue, which is a very emotive issue. I do think that UDM, the fact that it has failed to grow beyond other provinces, it has remained mainly the regional party in the Eastern Cape.
While some are licking their wounds, others are savoring unexpected gains. The Freedom Front Plus has doubled its showing.
Those who had moved to the DA might be finding it awkward now that DA is trying to expand its own support from the Afrikaners, from the blacks, which is beginning to crowd them out. And they wanted to go back to a party that is more forthright in defending their interests.
Also on an upward trajectory, two newcomers, Patricia de Lille's Good Party and the African Transformation Movement, were formed just months before the election. Among new players not making much of an impact, Black First, Land First and the African Content Movement. Mangoba Mkunu, SABC News, Pretoria.
The EFF in the Northwest is questioning the IEC's independence and fairness. Party members claim they were not assisted in lodging a formal complaint about irregularities at various voting stations in the province. The EFF is furious, saying the IEC is treating it with disdain. It doubts the Commission's independence. The party says when visiting the IEC offices in Potchefstroom, a bid to lodge a formal complaint was reduced to a meeting, during which their concerns were not recorded. The IEC says the matter will be given the necessary attention. There has been a recount of the votes cast at Ward 4 in Huhudi, near Vryburg in the northwest. Opposition parties raised the alarm about possible vote rigging. The Socialist Revolutionary Workers' Party claims there were several hundred extra ballots.
It didn't add up. The math was all awry. With the alarm raised and the IEC officials alerted, police swarmed in. The number of ballots counted far exceeded the official number of ballot books reserved for this voting station.
The votes did not tally, so now we were forced to recount. So that's what's been happening. So all opposition parties, in fact, came through to say that we are not happy with what's happening. We need the IEC to facilitate the process that we should recount, because you cannot have votes that do not tally in an excess of 730 votes. Can't happen.
We are not happy totally about IEC in the manner that they have conducted these elections. Our standpoint is that they have actually brought us people who are untrained, people who are unprofessional. So therefore, these elections, according to me, if you ask me, they are not free and fair.
17 hours after the voting station closed, the votes were finally recounted. Those results have not been released. Sintle Inglihihi, SABC News, Vryburg.
The African Transformation Movement has lodged a formal complaint with the IEC. It's related to alleged irregularities the party once investigated. Among them, double voting, a lack of scanners, as well as unstamped ID documents and ballot papers. The ATM is not alone in its dismay. Other parties are also fuming. They question the fairness of the election and are contemplating formal complaints of their own. The IFP and the UDM also suspect that double voting took place. Two men accused of disrupting elections at Guela village outside Giyani were granted bail of 5,000 rand each this morning. They're accused of contravening the Electoral Act. Giyani Magistrates Court C was packed to the rafters, the majority in support of the accused. Victor Mabunda and Advice Maluleke were arrested early on Tuesday morning. Outside court, fellow community members demanded their release. The state did not oppose bail. You're watching SABC News. We have more stories coming up after this break. Don't go away.
Reporter Sipho Stearman. Sipho, thank you very much indeed. What are they protesting about?
Well, they're talking about their living conditions, that they don't have clean drinking water, they don't have proper toilets, they don't have proper housing.
Lopang, tell us what's happening where you are.
Early this morning, one classroom was set alight at the school.
Reptiles is creeping into the classrooms like snakes.
Residents are saying that they've been failed by the Moana municipality.
This is what you see. People are angry. Let the municipal manager go.
We're explorers. We always have been. Endlessly curious. Always looking for answers. For new frontiers. For new stories. Because that is who we are. From script to screen. From yelling action to taking you on a journey. Radio producers. Script writers. On-air presenters. news reporters, sports analysts. We spend late nights creating captivating storylines and earlier mornings keeping you informed, educated, and entertained. For us, it's not a job, it's a calling. We do this and more because you do your part. SABC TV licenses, made possible by you.
Hello, I'm Nana, and I want to tell you a bit about Economics Unbound. It is a live studio current affairs program that brings an understanding of the economy, how it operates, and how it is managed. The show seeks to include ordinary South Africans in purposeful and well-informed discussions about the economy.
The whole corruption and having to pay people to get businesses, it's like killing our businesses.
While providing them with enough information to make better economic and financial decisions.
And we need to start thinking of new ways of creating new structures that are relevant at the time.
Through this program, audiences can look forward to 30 minutes of deep and tough questioning on the issues of the week.
Why do you think that our economy lends itself to such collusive behavior and such concentration of monopolies in key sectors?
Welcome back. Pro-Mercado Task Team spokesperson Arnold Molawutsi has been granted bail of 5,000 rand. He was arrested on Tuesday and charged with intimidation, inciting violence and contravening the Electoral Act. In an SABC interview on Tuesday, Molawutsi discouraged voters in Vuwani and surrounding villages from casting their ballots. The Pro-Mercado Task Team had earlier decided to boycott the poll. Vuwani residents are demanding their reincorporation into the Mercado municipality away from the newly formed Collins Chabane municipality. Molawutsi was ordered not to interfere with investigations into his case. He was previously found guilty of common assault and fined 300 rand. The court case against 24 suspects arrested after protests in Ramolutsi in the Free State has been postponed. This to allow further investigation and to verify addresses. The suspects, who include women, have all been remanded in custody. They were arrested following the torching of a community hall and a clinic. They faced charges of public violence and malicious damage to property. Protesters had demanded water, residential sites and jobs. Water and Sanitation Minister Gugile Nkwinti has won a court interdict against Public Protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane. The North Gauteng High Court ordered Mkhwebane not to make public her report on Nkwinti. The report deals with the minister's alleged hand in influencing the redistribution of a 97 million rand Limpopo farm to his friend. Nkwinti brought the urgent High Court application earlier this week. However, the report had already been released to affected parties, including President Cyril Ramaphosa. The ruling means the president may not yet act on the public protector's remedial actions. The report found Nkwinti had violated the Executive Ethics Code. Former security policeman João Rodrigues appeared in court again today. He's accused of the 1971 murder of anti-apartheid activist Ahmed Timol. Rodrigues earlier applied for a permanent stay of prosecution. This was argued in front of a full bench 2 months ago. The case against Rodrigues stems from the reopening of the inquest into Timol's death. After relentless pressure from Timol's family, Rodrigues was charged with murder in July 2018. The inquest found that Timol was thrown to his death from the 10th floor of Johannesburg Central Police Station. Rodrigues' defense argued that because of the time that had elapsed, it would be unconstitutional for the state to proceed with prosecution. It further said that medical officials who had performed autopsies on Timol had since died. They could therefore not give evidence, which could be beneficial to Rodrigues. The judgment has been reserved.
Solani Mkiva says that they believe that the king should be released and that they are not being opportunistic.
The last 4 years, we have been engaging with government. It cannot be a post-colonial government that begins to jail a king. in a context of what actually happened.
Bobby Solomons, he's the spokesperson of the Alex Shutdown Committee, the multi-billion rand Alexander Renewal Project. Nothing came of that.
Community wants to know what really happened to the monies.
The creative director of the label, Mansu, that of course means black is beautiful in Sesotho. What has been your experience in that regard, given, some of the more established labels that you have managed to work with?
It is hard. 15 years is a long time. There's a lot of sacrifice for your family to make for you.
This is the thing.
Wearing without the brief.
This is it this morning.
Welcome back. Too far to walk with no transport. This was the predicament of some farm dwellers in the Eastern Free State who were unable to vote. They've expressed deep disappointment that their votes mean nothing.
74-year-old Mapakiso Mukwena can no longer walk long distances, getting to the voting station 20 kilometers away on foot. Unthinkable. To add insult to injury, she was not aware of special voting. I could not sleep. Even now, I'm still not satisfied because I could not vote. I want to vote. Even young people here complain about long distance to access basic services. They hope their vote will bring change.
It's a long distance to go there to vote. So the old people can't go there because it's too far. So today my grandmother, she's angry because she don't going to vote because of it's too far.
A number of farm workers were not given time off to vote. Fearing victimization, they declined to be interviewed. Their employer could not be reached for comment.
Poor service delivery forced many voters' hands and some stayed away in protest. Battling water disruptions, the community of Kwazulu-Natal near Empangeni on KwaZulu-Natal's north coast was one of those divided on whether to vote or not. University of Zululand students Bongile Kele has to make do with 2 buckets of water a week. Taps in the area ran dry over the Easter weekend. Now Kele and other community members get water from a tanker twice a week. The municipality says an ongoing dispute between the Umhlathuze Water Board and striking employees led to the disruptions. The community claims the ANC-led Umhlathuze gave them no explanation, so they withheld their votes. The council says it's working on restoring the water supply to the area.
The government has promised us a lot of things that are not happening, but we have faith that things will change. We have voted as youth with the belief that our votes will be heard. If I don't vote, who else will speak for me?
The West Coast, once voting day was normally a carnival atmosphere on the West Coast, and Saldanha was no exception this election, despite disruptive protests late last year. The DA lost some ground but managed 50% of the vote. The ANC also bled support and garnered 32%. The dark horses, the Freedom Front Plus, picked up 5% of the vote and the EFF 3.5%.
Supporters from all parties partied into the night in a peaceful manner. The West Coast, renowned for its carnival atmosphere during election time, didn't disappoint, although voter turnout was down like around the rest of the country. Both the ANC and DA supporters claimed victory and were hopeful that their vote would bring about change.
We are very grateful that the ANC won this time because DA, it was doing very bad things to us.
The people here in Metropole would like that the municipality has to change because they're still living in informal settlements.
I'm very happy because the DA won. I never had any doubt that we will win, and I'm very happy.
The ANC leadership up the West Coast was scathing about the DA and claimed that although the DA won, change was coming and was inevitable.
As the ANC, we are very happy about the turnout of our voters to at least push the DA to a margin that is even less than 50%. So it is very nice that we can continue in this manner so that our voters are really seeing what the DA has been doing for many years. That is the issue that our people are crying for, that the DA is blocking development in our poor areas but giving all its budget to areas that afford. That is the issue that is the main. There's issues of electricity that it increases them, and it is bylaws that are anti-poor.
The DA, on the other hand, were happy with the results, although they observed the gains made by the Freedom Front Plus.
Well, from a DA in the West region, Western Cape, we're extremely proud to say that we've won 9 out of the 10 constituencies in the West region. I'm extremely proud. Some of our traditional votes did go in the direction of the Freedom Plus, but we still managed to hold on, and actually in some cases we did increase, and in some cases we did decrease, but we've done extremely well.
The people up the West Coast have voted, and everyone seems to be happy with the results, but much work needs to be done. The carnival atmosphere, however, remains in place. Craig Murray, SABC News, Saldanha, up the West Coast.
And that's it from me and the News at 9 team. The weather report is up next. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night.
Very good evening to you. It's time now to have a look at the weather conditions expected for tonight as well as tomorrow and leading into the weekend. For this evening, we've just got some drizzle along that northeastern escarpment that is expected, as well as a possibility of clear skies across most of the rest of the country. By tomorrow, we do have some fog patches expected along the Cape South coast, as well as a possibility of some morning drizzle once again along that northeastern escarpment with the possibility of fog patches. Having a look at your overnight temperature, winter is certainly settling in with mainly temperatures in single digits. Bloemfontein and Bethlehem with a low of 4 degrees, Pretoria at 10, but along the coastal regions it will be warmer with Richards Bay at 17 and Port St. John's at 16 degrees. Maximum temperatures will be cool to warm across the country. Kimberley will see a high of 21, Pretoria at 25, and Palabora also peaking at a high of 25. Along the coastal regions, East London will see a high of 23 and Port Elizabeth at 26. Having a look at your extended forecast for the weekend, by Saturday a beautiful day is expected. Clear conditions across the country. Temperatures will be cool to warm, and these conditions will persist into Sunday. Once again, clear conditions across the country. Warm temperatures in the north, but slightly cooler in the southern regions. That's all we have time for. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night.
Hello, I'm Nana, and I want to tell you a bit about Economics Unbound. It is a live studio current affairs program that brings an understanding of the economy, how it operates, and how it is managed. The show seeks to include ordinary South Africans in purposeful and well-informed discussions about the economy.
The whole corruption and having to pay people to get businesses, it's like killing our businesses.
While providing them with enough information to make better economic and financial decisions.
And we need to start thinking of new ways of creating new structures that are relevant at the time.
Through this program, audiences can look forward to 30 minutes of deep and tough questioning on the issues of the week.
Why do you think that our economy lends itself to such collusive behavior and such concentration of monopolies in key sectors?
In a UN report, scientists say climate change is getting worse.
1/3 of our food sources for the population come out of the ocean.
We spoke to people who have been directly affected.
We have lost a lot of cattle. Gemsbok vlakte, Tosca gebied and Jakkalskop. Everywhere you will see there's animals dying.
I've lost 2 of my cattle this January.
Africa's demand for clean drinking water is rising.
Drinking water is a top priority.
The next day when the water comes back, it's dirty.
I have implemented a level 5 water restriction, effective immediately.
Environmentalists seek solution to preserve the planet.
This is a Cape Kirpa, which is also one of the endemic species that is only found within the Western Cape, so it occurs nowhere else in the world except in our water systems.
Well, a very good evening to you, and thank you for joining us on SABC News Channel 404. I'm Flo Ledwaba. Great to be with you. Of course, we continue to monitor the election results and all election stories for you throughout the country. The Independent Electoral Commission says that the major results from South Africa's 6th democratic election will be released over the next few hours. Watching that progress bar are my colleagues at The Rock in Pretoria, Tsepiso Makwetla and Simpiwe Ngongwane. We'll cross to them just shortly at that Results Operation Centre in Pretoria. But first, let's take a look at our top stories. The IEC is calling in auditors to verify the vote after receiving several complaints of vote rigging. In one incident, police arrested 19 people for double voting in Kwazulu-Natal.
We are sick and tired that people must rig an election.
At least 9 smaller parties are demanding a revote after accusing the IEC of corruption. Meanwhile, some parties are celebrating an early victory tonight. ANC supporters in Port Elizabeth and the DA in George are already taking to the streets. All right, let me send you then to Pretoria, The Rock, where our team is standing by at the Results Operations Centre. Let me take you through to Tsepiso Makwetla. Good evening to you, Tsepiso. Take us through what's going on today. I see that the smaller parties are quite upset today, wanting to talk about vote rigging. And I understand that they're saying that they'd like another vote.
Thanks a lot, Flo. As you say, the IEC Results Operations Centre here, quite alive and alive with tension, I might add. One would say, depending on where you sit, that there is a storm brewing. Just how big it is, whether it's a storm in a teacup or it's something that could really upend not only the elections or the credibility of the vote, has been speculated. It's very much the centre of a discussion here. But of course, we'll hear a little bit more about what the parties say. My colleague Simpiwe Ngongwane on the floor to tell us what the leaderboard is saying and how the parties are feeling. Simpiwe?
All right, thank you so much, Tsepiso. A very good evening to all our viewers out there. Indeed, I'm coming to you from the floor of the IEC, of the Results Operations Centre. Well, whether it will be a storm in a teacup, well, the jury is still out on that. Well, the situation is relatively calm for now, a far cry from what we've seen earlier on. And as we've mentioned earlier on, I mean, the smaller parties are now crying foul, and the credibility and the integrity of the entire election process has been thrust into the spotlight as the smaller parties and as well as some of the bigger parties have accused the IEC of, in fact, rigging the elections. The big three parties, the ANC, the DA and the EFF, have actually lodged formal complaints with the IEC. Well, I've made several attempts to get in touch with the IEC, and Kate Bapela actually referred me to the communications team and said that they'll be chatting to us in just a moment. But I'll be having a brief conversation with some of the parties here on the floor, and just a quick preview. Well, the capturing progress is at 65% with only 10 million votes being counted, and we'll definitely give you more updates as the hour progresses. But for now, Tsepiso, it's back to you.
All right, thanks, Simpiwe. Let's take you back to Flo for more on what's happening on the ground in the provinces. Our various reporters out there collating that data from the provincial results operations centres, and we seem to hear of reports of some alleged irregularities in some places such as Kwazulu-Natal and Harding. I believe that there's some stories coming out there, Flo.
All right, thank you very much, Tsepiso and Simpiwe, coming to us there from The Rock in Pretoria. So Simpiwe telling us that there is some calm at the moment, but you would have heard the earlier reports that some of the smaller parties were really upset, and I suppose they're still upset, and accusing the IEC of corruption. So we'll definitely be monitoring that for you, but at the moment there seems to be some kind of calm. Well, vote counting in KwaZulu-Natal is still progressing slowly. IEC officials have counted barely half half of the votes in the province, and the ANC continues to dominate those polls. Counting in KwaZulu-Natal is expected to run throughout the night, with the bulk of the key results expected to emerge tomorrow. Right, for more on this then, let's cross live to our reporter then in Durban. Ayanda, good evening to you. Take us through what's happening there in KZN and Durban. We understand there was some drama. I mean, there's been drama throughout the day actually, but take us through what's happening there now.
Yeah, very good evening to you, Flo, and good evening to our viewers. Certainly, it has been yet another very, very busy day here in KwaZulu-Natal, both here at the Results Operating Centre, where from the morning, in fact, since last night, political party representatives have been glued to their screens, monitoring the results as they've been coming through quite slowly, Flo, as well, I suppose many of them would want to see these results coming in faster, but we're only halfway through the results, and as you said, we're expecting that they could be concluded by tomorrow later on in the evening. So that is one point that the political parties have been watching very closely. But of course, the big story, Flow, here in the province of KwaZulu-Natal has been the arrest of the 19 voters in different parts of the province. One in Port Shepstone, 2 in Tlotlwe up in the north, and the 17, I beg your pardon, that were arrested in Danhauser, and they will all be appearing in the different courts tomorrow morning, we understand, and will be, of course, covering those cases. Let me just bring in now, obviously, this has now pretty much, like the rest of the country, where political parties have raised concerns here in KwaZulu-Natal, objections and complaints have also been laid with the IEC. Let me bring in now my guest, Professor Begi Mgomezulu. Prof, it almost came to a standstill at a point when news broke out of these arrests and the other complaints that have been raised by political parties here in KwaZulu-Natal. And of course, looking at the history of this province, violence, political intolerance, we also know of the shooting that took place in Greytown of an IFP supporter killed outside of the voting station. I think concerns here are around the processes of the IEC and what this could mean for peace and stability in this province.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for this question. In fact, I must say that first of all, political parties in KwaZulu-Natal should be commended for having ensured that there was political stability during the election process. The only problem then, as we just highlighted, is that during the counting, then we heard about this shooting that took place. Of course, it might appear like a minor issue, but the fact that a soul has been lost makes it then be of a greater magnitude. And also, given the history of the province, as you have correctly pointed out, we are always on a high alert that if something happens, it might trigger even more problems. So that's why then even if an issue appears to be a minor issue, it has to be attended to very quickly, so that at least there are no reasons for those who may lose the election and say we lost because of A, B, C, D. So people must lose in a dignified manner and win in a dignified manner. So we don't want such things to taint what has appeared to be a relatively peaceful election.
Let's quickly go back to the results now, Prof. We'll be looking at, obviously, the ANC. We're still 50% through our results, of course, so the picture could still change, particularly because we're waiting for the results from the eThekwini Metro, and political parties are saying those could then change the results that we're seeing now. The ANC in the lead so far, followed by the IFP, interestingly, then the DA and the EFF.
Yeah, honestly speaking, I'm not particularly surprised with the results so far, because as you know, the ANC has national support. Some political parties are strong in certain provinces but not in others. And if you look at the way in which the IFP has canvassed in this province, it has done a sterling job. But that is not the only factor. I also think that there are a couple of other factors that could be seen as contributing factors. For example, you have heard the ANC, you have heard the NFP, both of which had some internal problems, and the IFP capitalized on that. You also have some areas that were predominantly DA support, like your Chatsworth, your Phoenix, And the DA was aware that the IFP was making inroads in those areas, which is why the IFP launched its manifesto in Chatsworth. And then the DA, out of panic, I would say, they then brought in Tony Leon, who has been out there in retirement, if I were to put it that way. So basically to try and rescue the situation. But in my view, that was too little, too late. So it's not surprising that the IFP is taking the second spot, and the DA, of course, is taking that spot. As for the EFF, I'm not surprised. It's still a young party. Let's give it a couple of years. It is growing. We should commend it for that, but it's not there yet. So it's not surprising.
All right, Prof, thank you so much for your time. Professor Begi Mngomezulu, thanks for his analysis. Of course, Flo, the results, as we said, only 50% of the results coming through. It's still going to be a long night for the data capturers behind us. We're still hard at work, as well as for the political parties. Many have said they're going to remain here throughout the night monitoring those results. But Saturday, the IEC has said that if there aren't any further problems, they are going to then declare those results here on Saturday at 12 p.m. All right, Flo, we're going to leave it there for now and take it back to you.
Thank you very much, Ayanda, coming to us from Durban there in KZN. And thank you very much to your guest, Prof. Begi. A long night for all of us indeed, as of course we keep our eyes there on that scoreboard and how the parties are performing. We'll bring you more details after the break, and we'll of course cross back to the Rock in Pretoria to find out what's happening with Tshepiso Makwetla and Simphiwe Ngongwane. Do stay tuned to SABC.
We do not just speak. We let every voice in our nation find full expression in language and in culture. We do not just teach. We empower all people with education. We do not just bring you the news. We place you where the news is happening. We do not just entertain. We take you on journeys. We do not just broadcast sport. We create an arena for sporting heroes to inspire you. Ours is not just a job, it's a calling to ensure that everyone in our nation is informed, educated, and entertained. We're able to do this because you do your part. SABC TV licenses. It's all made possible by you.
On Trains Travel, we bring you a full guide on all things lifestyle related. With so much to discover, we give you comprehensive reviews of places to visit, music, travel, and food. We also explore the arts, whether on or off stage. All this and more, be sure to tune into Trends Travel, Saturdays at 5:30 p.m.
Right, welcome back, and thanks very much for staying with SABC Channel 404. I'm Flo Ledova, coming to you live from Studio 11. All right, so I guess the big story then coming out of today is that the IEC is calling in auditors to verify the vote after receiving several complaints of vote rigging. And of course, you would have seen some of the smaller parties really quite upset about that and accusing the IEC of corruption. I don't suppose that the IEC is very happy about that. Let me take you to the Rock in Pretoria, Results Operations Centre, where Tshepiso Makwetla and, of course, my colleagues in Simphiwe Ngongwane are standing by to give you the latest and up-to-date information of what's happening there with the votes.
Thanks a lot, Flo, and a very good evening to you and to our viewers. Once again, we are indeed live from the Pretoria IEC Results Operations Center. As you can see in the background, the leaderboard on, and zooming in here to our touch screen, you will see the latest results, the race for seats showing that as of, let me see, 66.15% of the votes counted. That's over 15 million, or rather 15,164, 222,925 polling stations. The ANC has 56.7% in the lead. DA at 22.52%, 9.84% the EFF. And if I can just move the screen up a bit, as you can see, the Freedom Front Plus at 2.60%, right behind the IFP. For some, that has been a huge surprise. Some saying that they would have expected the UDM, which you can see here at about 8th position, at 0.54% support. To discuss some of these results and what could possibly be the reason behind that, Professor Somadoda Figeni, our resident analyst this evening. Let's just first start with this. The predictions, some are saying, those who are on the conservative side are saying this is exactly what they had in mind. ANC 56.7%, meaning that if it really is a jump, it will reach 60% just about. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I do think that it is one expected in terms of many projections, but it is equally surprising that a party that has so many problems, from the State Capture Commission, revelations around some of its leaders, the economy not doing well, the divisions within the party, at the time when one thought it was at its most vulnerable, there seemed to be no dramatic shift where the opposition parties would be taking advantage of that. Reason being, ANC's weaknesses do not translate automatically into opposition strength. Hence, we were talking about the DA's own internal challenges, but also the turnout issue here, where some people thought that parties like the EFF, with such energetic crowd in the stadiums, in the social media.
I see just even on some, exactly, some of the tweets saying that the EFF strength was purely on the social media space. But I want to talk about not only the projections of the media, Prof, and the pundits who were saying that there is going to be not only a weakened ANC, a strengthened EFF in some cases, a very present ATM, which seems to be borne out by these stats. But more importantly, when we look at those predictions versus the science of the IEC and its system, which is in question at the moment, how should we see the situation now? Is it concern that the predictions that the ANC would have lost votes at the polls starting to show?
Well, I do think that if you go back to 2004 to the present, there's been a progressive decline of the ANC, losing about 4 to 5% in each election. And this outcome is in keeping with that. And it was just the dramatic fall in the urban areas in 2014 as well as 2016 local government elections that we were seeing. But given its crisis and its internal challenges, people thought it would actually be a rupture. That's now that it is holding on the upper side of 55. Is in itself something that will come as a consolation.
Prof, let me just get straight to the crux of it, because there clearly a lot of tension here. The smaller party is accusing the governing party of rigging the votes. There are those who are making all kinds of allegations that it's because of the fissures within that we've seen the shenanigans that have played out, that of double voting. It's supposed to take it. What is the reality of the situation? Because people do tend to hang on to those predictions and take them for a fact, especially, as you said, if there's been consistency in their predictions in the past.
Here, what you are seeing in comparative terms, you go back to 1994 elections and the irregularities that were spotted then, and even the accusation and counter-accusation of elections being stolen, especially between the ANC and the IFP in KZN. The situation was worse then. The previous elections, where some boxes were found in some places. So in this particular case, I think it is the fact that smaller parties which have multiplied, nullifying each other's strength, might be so aggrieved even by the slightest signal of irregularities, even
which we saw play out on the podium earlier on.
Even if in comparative terms to what we've accepted in the past, may not be such a big factor. Yes, that does not take away from the IEC having to improve on its systems.
Okay, I want us to get to the credibility of its systems in just a moment and the failures or weaknesses we've seen in past elections. Again, I'll come back to, is it significant that the most number of arrests that have been made with regards to allegations of attempted fraud or instances of fraud come out of KwaZulu-Natal, given the various conspiracy theories, conjecture that was made ahead of these elections and the standing or strength of the ANC?
Well, I do think that it is quite significant that it's coming from KZN, as much as the issue of political killings within the ruling party and across political parties in KZN has become a significant feature. Therefore, it might need a very special attention that you find some of these. Yes, the numbers may not be massive, but that you do have these particular trends.
What would you consider as significant in the numbers that are found to have been meddled with? The IEC saying earlier on that it's undertaking an audit, so the sample size will be able to tell how widespread the practice is. 1% or less, would that be enough to call for a rerun of elections, as some are speculating here?
I doubt that 1% of any irregularity. Of course, 1% is quite significant in itself. But if that 1% was systematic expression, it would call for a rerun. But if you have something like 1% concentrated in a particular area, then that particular area, the recounting, the reviewing of the systems might be that it would be unprecedented that you do have a small sample and then you say rerun the entire system.
Let's go to the integrity of the system. You mentioned earlier on that there have been problems with the IEC system. I think there's an impression by some that elections are always 100% correct. Now let's talk about Section 27A of the Electoral Act, which is what the IEC spoke about earlier on. And they said they cause large-scale complications of distributions and logistics, this issue that people can go anywhere to vote for the... Is it indicative of greater problems, or is it just something that could mean that there is a kink in the system that could be overcome and negotiated after these elections?
Well, I do think that the latter is the case. It suggests that there are certain, loopholes in the system that need to be refined, that need to be taken care of. For example, the indelible ink may suggest that the procurement with the company where they procured was problematic. But you'd have to go one step further to say, because of this ink, here is evidence of people who went on massive numbers to re-vote again.
You mentioned that in 1994 there were even court processes, as stories coming out of here that there could be court challenges. Would they be on a similar scale? Should South Africans feel alarmed that there are questions being raised now?
Nothing at this stage suggests something on that massive scale. That's why I'm saying the onus might be on those who are raising the issues, besides the sampling that IEC has undertaken to do, to say, here is the evidence. In this voting station, in that voting station, is so massive that it would have tilted the scales in one form or another, or it would have reduced the election outcome. Remember, the international standard is that the elections should be free, fair, and credible.
And how you define that
yes,
is a whole other issue in legalese, and of course the standard is not the same in other constitutions in the world. We'll unpack some of those issues and others. Of course, look at other provinces, looking at that leaderboard. How is that progressing? The counting, it is expected by some that by midnight the Eastern Cape will have a much, much clearer picture, which will tell us who really has taken over power there in terms of the greater majority. We'll be back here at the Results Operations Center. Flo, it's back to you.
Thank you very much, Tshepi. You're right. As she said, we'll be keeping you up to date from province to province as to what the results are looking like. But let me just give you an idea of what's happening in terms of the National Assembly results at the moment. So 66.15% of the voting districts completed at this point. The ANC sitting at 56.7%, the DA sitting at 22.52%, and then the EFF at 9.84%. So still a lot more counting we have to do at this point, but let's just giving you just that update as to what's happening there. So you can take a look at that screen. That's what are the numbers that I was referring to, or rather the percentages I was referring to there. We'll keep you updated up to the minute. All right, so more election news, results and analysis after the break. And of course, SABC 2 viewers will then be joining us at the top of the hour. Do stay with SABC.
Solani Mkiva says that they believe that the king should be released and that they are not being opportunistic.
The last 4 years, we have been engaging with government. It cannot be a post-colonial government that begins to jail a king in a context of what actually happened.
Bobby Solomons, he's the spokesperson of the Alex Shutdown Committee, the multi-billion-rand Alexander Renewal Project. Nothing came of that.
Community wants to know what really happened to the money.
The creative director of the label, Mansu, that of course means black is beautiful in Sesotho. What has been your experience in that regard, given, you know, some of the more established labels that you have managed to work with?
It is hard. 15 years is a long time. There's a lot of sacrifice for your family to make for you.
This is the thing.
Without the brief.
This is it this morning.
Reporter Sipho Stearman. Sipho, thank you very much indeed. What are they protesting about?
Well, they're talking about their living conditions, that they don't have clean drinking water, they don't have proper toilets, they don't have proper housing.
Lopang, tell us what's happening where you are.
Early this morning, one classroom was set alight at the school. Reptiles are creeping into the classrooms like snakes.
Residents are saying that they've been failed by the Moana municipality.
This is what you see. People are angry. Let the municipal manager go.
In my time, I've truly seen it all firsthand. Angizwanga, ngizibonele ngalawam amehlo. Going through my photographs and reflecting on my memory box really brings back many life experiences that are bittersweet and humbling. In this, my homeland, I've entertained tourists and offshore traders. I've evolved from dealing with the battering system to trading foreign exchange. I've traveled to the ends of the world and tasted a diversity of culinary palates. To outsiders, I have lived alongside wild animals, tamed some, and collected livestock as wealth. So my memory box is overflowing. And don't get me wrong, I'm not bragging, but in fact, I'm breaking and hurting deep down inside of this heart of mine. Why? What for? I hear you ask yourself, my fellow Africans, friends and family. The images I have of me are those of the point of view of my onlooker, not those of myself, the subject at hand. I'm choking and suffocating at the chalice those anthropologists and filmmakers tie around me as some sort of grand name tag. Stories have been made and told of me, not of my own words. Films and graphic images have entertained millions of audiences at my expense.
Right, well, very good evening to you and welcome to our SABC2 viewers who are now joining us. I'm Flo Ledwaba. Tonight we have wall-to-wall coverage on South Africa's election results. Coming up, we cross to the Eastern Cape, the Western Cape and the Free State. But first, let's find out what's making headlines then at this hour. Vote rigging allegations casting a shadow on the 2019 elections. The IEC is now calling in auditors to verify the vote after police arrested 19 people for double voting in KwaZulu-Natal.
We are sick and tired that people must rig an election.
Smaller parties are demanding a revote tonight after accusing the IEC of corruption. And some parties are celebrating an early victory while others are licking their wounds. Well, the Independent Electoral Commission is hoping that an independent audit will resolve complaints from smaller parties. At least 9 smaller parties are complaining about double voting and other electoral problems. In KwaZulu-Natal, police arrested 19 people for allegedly casting their votes at more than one polling station. The commission says that auditors will determine the extent of those or, if any, irregularities.
As the country waits for the official election results, the IEC is taking no chance in ensuring they remain credible. Following several incidents where some people are said to have voted more than once, the election body has instituted an investigation.
The Electoral Commission will urgently conduct an audit of results and votes cast in a sample of voting stations to ascertain if double voting occurred. The audit will cover a statistically representative sample of voting stations as well as where complaints and allegations of double voting have been received.
4 people were arrested in KwaZulu-Natal. Several more incidents are being investigated.
The Electoral Commission has also ordered an investigation into the effectiveness of the indelible ink marker pens supplied for the election. The investigation will be done in conjunction with the CSIR and with the full cooperation and support of the supplier.
The IEC plans to release the final results on Saturday. But with such allegations surfacing, there are fears the announcement could be delayed. Mzwandile Lembech, SABC News at the IEC Rock, Pretoria.
All right, and to the Western Cape, where the ANC is conceding defeat after securing barely 30% of that vote, with over 90% of voting districts declared. The DA is sitting very comfortably at 55%. That's 4 percentage points lower than 2014. We're going to head to Cape Town shortly with our reporter, Bulelani Philip. But let me just tell you what Cape Town is then looking like at the moment. So the DA is now sitting at 55.46%, the ANC at 28%. 8.7% there, as you can see. And then we've got the EFF sitting at 3.8%, Good Party at 3.1%. And then the other parties all combined sitting there at 9.1%. That's after over 90% of those voting districts counted. So the DA quite comfortable there in the Western Cape at this point. Right, let me cross over then to Bulelani Philip, who is in the Western Cape then, and he will take us through those election results. Bulelani, good evening. To take us through what's going on in the Western Cape. It does seem that Good Party has sort of popped up there. We would have expected the Good Party to pop up in the Western Cape. Have they made any kind of a dent to the DA? It seems as though the DA is quite comfortable.
Well, good evening to you, Flo, and to the viewers. Of course, you're coming to us as it is a graveyard shift. If I look just behind me, a lot of the political parties have left. I suppose they're coming to the understanding that the results may not change very significantly overnight, and the results as they stand are not going to be changing any way that is going to change the situation as it is now. As you've said in your intro, the DA sitting comfortably at 55%, and given that 90% of the voting districts have been declared, I don't foresee that they will be dropping below the 50% mark and making them the outright winner in the province, meaning that they would not need any other political party to go into coalition with in terms of governing. Of course, the ANC was hopeful that they will be tapping into the weaknesses that were experienced by the DA over the past years or so, given their ramblings and the conflict and the tension with Patricia de Lille, which actually ended up leading to that exit of Patricia de Lille from the DA. But of course, the ANC did not quite, exploit that kind of weakness. The DA coming out stronger. Of course, I would say the big winner in this election is the new kid on the block, Good Party of Patricia de Lille, securing about 3.1% at the moment. Of course, that will mean that they will probably have a representation in the provincial legislature. But the one thing that I've noted, Flo, out of the results is that there were over 13,000 spoiled ballots in this province. And those spoiled ballots actually exceed the number of votes of 42 other political parties that actually contested the elections in the province. So there's quite a significant number of people who deliberately or by mistake actually led to them having spoiled ballots. So as things stand now, the DA is the front runner, and come tomorrow morning around midday, the IEC says it's going to make its final provisional results, of course, for the province. Obviously, provisional results must be confirmed by the national IEC. Flo?
Coming to us from the Western Cape there. It's unfortunate to hear that with about 13,000 spoilt ballots there. So something that Bulelani has picked up there in the province. So it does seem that it's kind of tickets, isn't it then, for the other parties, as the DA seems to have been very comfortable in the Western Cape. Not much of a dent as might have been expected by some of the analysts from the Good Party. But nonetheless, as for a new party, they have managed to make it into the top four then in the Western Cape. We'll bring you more election results, more details. We'll be crossing to our other provinces and giving you updates as to what's happening in those other provinces as well. So do stay with SABC.
The SABC News mobile app is your one-stop digital portal to all the news you need. Stay connected with the latest in breaking news. Watch the SABC News channel along with clips and live streams of all the big news events. And listen to all the SABC News radio stations live, including podcasts and much more. Simply download the SABC News app to your Android or iOS device from either the Play Store or the App Store. SABC News, independent, impartial.
Get the facts first.
In 1994, I think was soos almal, was ek ook baie excited geweest.
For South Africa, art was never a good thing.
From a footballing point of view, there was never a separation.
get to the truth.
There's still some serious issues in South Africa.
Maar ek dink die regering kan regtig waar probeer om harder te werk om
ke apartheid in Sutlile ke ya lekeswa ke batho ba rena ba democracy batho ba batsho e seng makgowa.
See what it all really means.
Ek is geel, want dit is die kleur in die verkeerslig wat vir jou sê wees versigtig.
I still give South Africa red.
We are somewhere in between.
We're giving our democracy a green for sure. We're very happy.
Democracy Gauge, weekdays at 5:30 on SABC News, Channel 404.
All right, welcome back to SABC2 viewers and those of you watching SABC from Channel 404 on DSTV. Thank you very much for choosing us. All right, so we're going to be crossing off to the Eastern Cape shortly, where our reporter Lerato is standing by. But I quickly just want to take you through what's going on there in the Eastern Cape. That graphic you can see on your screen at the moment. You can see ANC very comfortable, 68.7% at an 84% voter districts counted thus far. So it looks like a bit of a landslide victory there for the ANC, isn't it? And then we've got the DA coming in at 15.8%, the EFF at 7.5%, and then coming in at fourth is the UDM at 2.3%, and the other parties combined at 5.8%. And that's, of course, based on a 61.1% voter turnout. All right, so that's what's happening. That's what it's looking like in the Eastern Cape then at the moment. All right, let's cross over then live to the Eastern Cape, where our reporter Lerato is standing by to give us an idea as to what's happening there. It does seem that the ANC has started, the ANC members have started to celebrate at this point. You can see just behind Lerato, I see quite a few people in their ANC regalia. What's happening there? There seems to be some kind of a jovial mood there. Good evening, Lerato.
Okay, well, as you can hear, it is a celebratory move in the Eastern Cape. We have just heard from our IEC official, Mr. Crosby, that all the votes in the metro have been tallied. So that is why you see people celebrating. The ANC, who lost the vote in 2016 after losing to the DA, say that this for them is a victory. They've regained the metro, although this is a provincial election. But also in the Eastern Cape, about 83% of the districts have also tallied their votes, and the ANC is currently leading with 67%, followed by the DA and then the EFF. So as you can see, the celebrations, premature perhaps because not all the voting is done, but they say that it's pretty much clear that it's done already. Let's speak to some people and find exactly how they are feeling. Let's see who's here. Mama, namhlanje kuthiwa niyabhiyoza. Lizwa nje ANC iphumele namhlanje.
Siyabhiyoza nyani namhlanje ngoba iphondo lethu niyalibona uba liku-68%. Yilondo ke namhlanje sinemincili ngoba kaloku abantu ebebesijongile bekuthiwa hayi ayizovotelwa i-ANC kuba yenze le nale nale. Saya ebantwini bethu sayocela uxolo ngezinto esizaziyo bazenzekile, sabathembisa into yoba sizakwenza utshintsho uphatha kwatata uRamaphosa. Yiyo ke le nto sonobe kangaka namhlanje.
We also have the Minister of Human Settlement, Indian Feket, also here. She spoke earlier on saying that saluting really the stalwarts who have gone out in numbers to try and garner votes and also hope again for the ANC in this region. Ms. Lilia, how are you feeling that the ANC has fared in these elections, especially in the metro? How are you feeling?
Well, I'm very happy. Definitely, we crisscrossed the country, talking to our people, and they came in numbers. And they came in numbers to vote for ANC.
That is, Minister State is very, very happy. Let's speak to some people. Mama, how are you feeling? How are you? As you can see, some people are so excited they can't even speak. Let's speak to this young man. Tata, you guys have done well. How are you feeling with the result? Interesting views from the Northern Metro. That young man saying that Jesus will come back, and when Jesus comes back, the ANC will still be controlled. As you can see in the metro, the night is still young. Still more votes to come in, but at 83%, the ANC is leading the province with 67% of the votes. So obviously, as you can see, the party is carrying on, and they are saying the night is still young. So from the Eastern Cape, in the celebratory mood, it's back to you in studio.
Very much. She's taking us through what's happening there in the Eastern Cape. It's given, isn't it, for the Eastern Cape there? They must be very happy with that. 68.2% already at this point. All right, and then we're going to take you through, just take a look at your screen at the moment. It will pop up just now, but the Eastern Cape Legislature, what the votes there are looking like. And the ANC 68.2%, DA 16.5%, EFF 7.6%, UDM coming in fourth at 2.6%. The other parties combined at 5.1%. So it's what seems like an easy victory there for the ANC there in the Eastern Cape. We'll keep you updated if there are any changes, but it seems that at this point, with that amount of votes counted, it's quite a given what will happen there. So 85.03% of the results captured at the moment. Right, moving on then, a number of well-established political parties are performing poorly in this election. The UDM, as you would have seen in the Eastern Cape, which would have been one of their strongholds, the IFP and COPE are seeing fewer votes compared to previous elections. Meanwhile, parties targeting a specific constituency like Socialist Revolutionary Workers' Party, the Women Party and the Land Party are also failing to win significant support.
The emergence of more political parties targeting a specific audience through raising the one burning issue that the electorate resonates with has seen these elections having the longest ballot paper, with 48 political parties contesting the elections. But these political parties are not doing well. They are struggling to attract a huge audience to have a stronger voice in Parliament.
It's not particularly working for many of them. As I said, of the more than 40 parties contesting this election, perhaps six of those very small parties will find some traction in national Parliament. So one has to ask oneself whether an implicit threshold is actually necessary.
But some of them say it is not the message they are sending that is the problem, but getting the message across.
Elections in this country are so costly to an extent that even if you've got a good message, as long as you don't have money, as long as you don't have resources, to make sure that your message reaches as many people as possible.
But there's another elephant in the room. The parties that have been under the helm of one leader for the longest time. Many of these are leaders who have formed these political parties. It would seem there is no party without them.
What I do know is that Principal Selezi will never die. Even when he's no longer the leader of the IFP, he will forever be present in the leadership that he has groomed, in the party that he has founded.
I'm hearing people saying ACDP is the Reverend Meshwe. When we think of ACDP, we think of him. And obviously I want that to change, because I'm not going to be a president of the ACDP forever. We are busy training somebody who's going to take over from me.
The UDM has also been losing support over the years, with the emergence of new political parties, including the ATM. Analysts warn that the party might do even worse in these elections.
He is a fairly strong and vocal leader, and he's been a solid leader over the longest time, but it could be a case of voters not really knowing who else belongs to this party or the relevance of the party. You know, beyond the Eastern Cape and his stronghold there, what does the party bring to the national conversation?
But analysts say there are parties where the electorate is attracted to a party specifically because of its leader, like the Good Party under Patricia de Lille. Busisiwe Jemsana Mantashe, SABC News, Pretoria.
All right, like I said, we're going to move from province to province throughout the evening. We'll be crossing to the Free State shortly, but let me just tell you what's happening there in terms of the National Assembly votes there in the Free State. The graphic is going to be up. There it is. It's up on your screen at the moment. Let's take a look at how the top four political parties are faring there, with the 59.8% voter districts counted thus far. another comfortable one for the ANC there, 63.9%. And then we've got the DA sitting at 16.6%, EFF coming in at 10.6% there in the Free State. And then you've got the FF Plus coming in at 4%, and the other parties combined sitting at 4.6%. That's based on a 63% voter turnout there. Right, let's then cross live to Bloemfontein, where our reporter Palesa Moeti is at the IEC Election Centre at the moment. Palesa, good evening to you. Take us through what's been going on throughout the day there.
Well, we're at the Results Operations Center here in Bloemfontein, and yes, the results continue to trickle in. We are now standing at about 60% of voting districts whose results have been compiled, put together, they're literally finalized. But obviously, you know, the capturing process is still ongoing. We still have the ANC firmly in the lead with just over 60% of the votes, with the DA still as the official opposition. But just joining us right now is political analyst Dr. Choice Maketa, and we're just going to talk about, you know, what was expected and perhaps just going forward, you know, what we can expect still in the Free State. Dr. Choice, thank you very much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Just take us through, you know, what is it that we were really looking at, you know, before coming into these elections? What is it that, you know, perhaps the people of the Free State were hoping to see?
I think before this election, there was sort of a feeling and a sense that the ANC vote would sort of go down a bit. The surprise for us, more than anything, is Freedom Front Plus. And what we are seeing now is that, in fact, all the parties have actually gained in this election. When you look at a DA being a still official opposition party now at 60% of the voting districts covered, you get a sense that they will remain strong. And what is interesting with the DA is that the conservative white vote moved back to Freedom Front Plus, and you would expect that DA would lose, but instead DA gained as well. DA and EFF actually gained from the ANC vote somehow. What is interesting with Freedom Front Plus, and I think it gained from smaller parties, just the debates, you know, the issue of land, the issue of language, those concerns build up to make sure that the Freedom Front Plus recollects itself to build a strong opposition, because it's not just in the Free State. In fact, it's amazing that Freedom Front Plus has actually made it strong in many provinces.
Before the elections, opposition parties were talking about, you know, coalitions, possibly entering into a coalition government. But you know, with what we are seeing now, well, it's still early hours. But is that something that you think would still be feasible or not really? Do you believe that the ANC has got a tight grip on the Free State?
Well, we still have two big municipalities that are still to be captured. But it does not look like there will be coalition. But political parties must always be ready to work together. They must always be ready to compromise and look at what is common among them to work together. Because along the way, life requires that they are able to work together. But at this point, ANC is comfortable where it is to say they have the majority they need, but that does not mean they should not be working well with other political parties. In fact, we need more than anything right now a strong opposition, and we are excited to see DA and EFF and Freedom Front Plus building up that stronger opposition. It would have been nice to have the official opposition really, really strong.
And then we're seeing a lot of new parties also coming into the fore. I mean, with the previous elections, we had about 16 parties contesting. Now it's 28. What does the emergence of these smaller parties mean?
I think the emergence of these smaller parties mean people were looking for alternatives. You know, people start other political parties because they are not happy where they are, and there are those issues that are not well represented that they feel should be lifted into the discourse. And they should not be discouraged even if they don't make it this time around. But ATM, I think ATM in the Free State is at about 5 or 6 political party. There will be those that make it with 1 seat or so, but they should not give up, because building a political party from scratch is a lot of work, and people should not give up on the first round. Our democracy allows for that kind of representation.
What can these newer parties learn from perhaps a party like your COPE, for instance? You know, break away from the ANC. It has experienced its own fair share of problems.
I think what the smaller parties can learn from COPE and from EFF, actually, because these are two different cases, is that as a political party, you must define your agenda clearly right from the beginning. And as a party, you must be prepared to actually go to elections, internal elections of the party, before you go to national elections, so that leadership is very clear, there are no doubts and things, and you sell your message very well to the people. Because with COPE took off very well. But you remember we had Shilowa and we had Tera Lekota, powerful leaders who sadly at the first conference could not decide on elections, and people really wanted the party to stabilize and go for elections, and from there it went down. But now when you look at EFF, when EFF launched, they were ready to go to elections. They wanted to get to national elections solid and strong, and go to national elections with a membership that has taken part in deciding who's going to lead them beyond national elections.
Now, lastly, let's look at the issue of women in politics. Where do you think women are going to be fitting in this government that will be coming in?
Women will fit in well everywhere. And I think we should actually congratulate the ANC right from the beginning, when nobody was thinking of balancing the 50-50 representation of women. But when you look at the parties, the different parties, when you go through their party lists, you see representation of women. We have women who are very strong. We have women who understand what they want in political leadership. They have the skills, they have the expertise, and I think they will make their own space in political life. And I'm glad that there are even those political parties that put that running for premiership. I mean, as much as DA, for instance, is going to be the official opposition, if everything goes that way right up to the end, to take the courage and put a woman and say, for the Free State, we're actually putting a woman to lead. That, for us, it's a win.
Thank you very much, Dr. Choice Maketa. That is political analyst Dr. Choice Maketa, just emphasizing the very important role that women have to play in, leadership in the Free State. With the ANC already having taken the lead to make sure that women are put out there, and also followed by the DA, making sure that women have a place in politics, but also just highlighting that the newcomers, the new political parties need to develop their own identity in order to find a space within South African politics. But with that, it's back to you in studio.
Thank you very much, Palasa. Certainly an important one, that about the role of women in the politics, and we certainly hope this time around that we will see bigger representation of women. Right, and in terms of the race for seats, all right, we're going to take a look at what's happening in the Free State. Please remember that these are predictions. These are early predictions. The IEC will announce fully on Friday, or whether they said Saturday, what it is actually looking like. So let's take a look at that screen at the moment then. All right, so the Free State Legislature, total of 30 seats, right? And this is what the breakdown looks like at the moment. Like I said, prediction. ANC, 19 seats. DA, 6 seats. EFF, 4. FF plus 1 there. And ATM looks like it was going to pop up and then didn't. So let's take a look at the percentage points in that regard. So the ANC would then be sitting at 63.5%. 22.3%, the DA at 20%, the EFF 13.3%, and FF plus 3.4%. And that's 53.89% of those voter districts counted. And hence I say this is just those early predictions, and 63.19% voter turnout in the Free State there. All right, so that's what's happening there. We'll keep you updated, and we'll have many of these sort of graphics for all the provinces throughout. Let's take a short break. Do stay with us. We'll be going back to Pretoria, to the Rock, with Tshepiso Makwetla and Simphiwe Ngongwane, who will be, of course, taking a look at that leaderboard, having more analysis on what we can expect as we sort of count down to finally knowing what will be happening. And hopefully by Saturday, we'll all know. Some will be happy, some won't. We'll see what happens. Stay with us.
Don't be afraid to open yourself up to new experiences. Exchange and share ideas and crafts. I want to move on from the idea of the African as an exotic person who dances nicely and makes good artwork. We must be at the cutting edge of everything possible, as we once were. Many ancient African kingdoms had scientific and mathematical knowledge that still baffles experts today.
When I look at Africa, I see hope, I see trust, bright colors, warm smiles, variety and difference. In the end, it's not just about wanting to know what the African look is, or if we have a common African identity.
Right, welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with SABC. Those of you watching us from SABC 2 or DSTV channel 404, thanks so much for choosing us. All right, let's cross over to the Rock then in Pretoria, where Tshepiso Makwetla is standing by. She'll be having more political analysis, and of course, they'll be looking closely at that leaderboard. Tshepiso, good evening.
Good evening, and thank you very much, Flo. As you say, the race for votes, the race for seats continues, and we've got pretty much of a fuller picture, moving towards 70% of those votes that have been counted and verified. But we're focusing now on Gauteng. Obviously, we know that the battle for Gauteng has been very, very fierce. We saw that play itself out in Alexandra earlier on in the past couple of weeks. We spoke about it this week as well. And just looking at the map of Gauteng by votes, what we've seen, this is over 52.8%. 52.58% of the votes completed. And as you see from the map here, the green being the ANC, the yellow being the Democratic Alliance. You'll see a bit of red there by Tshwane, a bit of red here in the Merafong city area. And here you see some purple. I mentioned it earlier on, some surprising statistics coming through. This purple here is a Freedom Front Plus. Professor Somatota Fikeni, Professor Derek Kotze here with me to talk about this. Some say it may be a surprise, some say not. Prof, what do you think? Where do these votes come from? Are they coming from the Democratic Alliance, and if so, why?
There's no doubt that the Freedom Front Plus has taken a chunk from the Democratic Alliance. Reason being some of the issues which have come up recently, and the Democratic Alliance was not forthright in actually defending that particular constituency, particularly of white or Afrikaners, on the issue of land expropriation, on the issue of languages, especially Afrikaans, being removed as the major language in the universities and some schools, the issue of sports transformation in areas such as Rabi, and the street names, the statues. So this particular community might have felt besieged to a point of retreating to a party that was very clear in defending their own interests. The second part might be
what I think is a revolving door, as the DA is trying to transform and bring more black leaders. Some of the white, constituencies within the DA might feel alienated, might feel this is an affirmative action of some kind.
So failing to identify with the identity that the Democratic Alliance is pushing forward. Professor Kotsa, I know we mentioned earlier on, we're speaking about it, Schweizer-Reneke, what happened there. You say that there was a sense that the DA, which would have been seen to be representing largely the white community, and this is obviously a very general statement in Gauteng, did not fight hard enough for this teacher who was accused of that racial incident. It was something that went viral.
Yes, that's indeed so. According to Solidarity's own research institute, that was quite a key moment in terms of association with the DA and the feeling that the DA is not anymore, as my colleague is saying, sort of speaking on behalf of them. So that was, although it appears as if it's one isolated incident, but it seems as if it became almost representative of a sentiment that existed, or that was building up within those communities in relation to the DA for quite some time.
And Professor Kosa, I want us to cast our eye again on this map to just get a sense of the population groups, the demographics, everyday life. We're looking at the West Rand here largely. Here we're looking more towards the East Rand, where we see a lot of the Freedom Front Plus support. Obviously, there's still a lot of empty white patches. That means that this picture could completely turn around. But in these two areas, the east and the western parts of Gauteng, there often have been allegations of vestiges of racism. Is this possibly what could have happened here, that those people felt disaffected? They wanted to slant terug?
I think so. I mean, you mentioned the slogan that the Freedom Front Plus was using for this election. I suspect that these areas are also quite typical of smaller holdings. So it's almost a semi-urban, area where it's almost becoming rural. As well as we know, both of those two areas are former mining areas. So there's, I think, still lots of families who have been in those areas, living in those areas over generations, and they've been involved in the mining, and that is quite a cutthroat type of industry, especially more lately where many of these mines were closed. We can think about, for example, the East Rand, where some of those mines became very notorious of how they were dealing with both black and white miners.
So with the voter turnout so far, Prof, I know some of the projections were of a depressed township voter turnout, and in the past Gauteng was said to have given the DA the level of victory that it had because you had a higher suburban turnout. This year, what is the picture that we're seeing, and do we have a more angrier township vote that we're seeing as protest votes, or people just simply giving their votes to other parties?
Actually, we're seeing higher levels of non-participation or people who didn't turn out to vote. Even for the parties such as the EFF, which at face value seem to have very intense participatory groupings in the stadiums, in the social media, in protests, those do not have a trust that the political system itself will solve the problem.
And I want to talk about that legitimacy crisis, Professor Kotsa. There's arguments now about the credibility of this vote, but who would it hurt the most? Wouldn't the ANC be most hurt by that legitimacy crisis? Because then the opposition parties can come out and say the president of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, does not have a mandate from a majority of South Africans to lead, to govern.
Well, that appears to be the case, but I think what's interesting about Gauteng as a province is that the voter turnout is the highest of all the provinces in the country. It's more than 71. So that argument about that the voter turnout, the lower vote, much significantly lower voter turnout nationally, is an indication of a credibility problem or legitimacy problem, I think is a slightly less applicable to Gauteng than to some of the other provinces. But I think what is important is also that there's differences of voter turnout within the different parties. And the voter turnout of the DA is normally higher than that of the ANC. At local government level, it's very much pronounced, and I guess we don't have the information yet that it might be a factor in this election.
So what does it mean for the fortunes of the DA, very briefly then? Well, especially given the predictions, the CSIR was saying they see either stabilized or a slight loss for the DA. Is that being borne out by the results that we're seeing here? And is it a surprise that the ANC is already at 52.58% with the over 1,457,000 stations and voting completed?
Yes, that is, the logic that normally applies appear to be not applicable to this election. Gauteng is such a boiling pot at this stage about the contestation because it's the province which is most important for the ANC, contributes the most votes, the same for the DA, the same for the EFF, and even the same for the Freedom Front Plus. So it's a highly contested province, and I think because of all these dynamics that we are talking about, it has become, even for the CSIR, very difficult to make a final prediction. But what will be the outcome? It varies between 49 and just over 50%. So it's going to, no one wants to call the final results of this election.
Well, I'm going to push you, Prof. Fikeni, because there are a lot of unaccounted votes here, according to these white patches. Do you think, as the ATM, some projections were saying, that they already see, just in Soweto alone, a seat for the ATM?
It's possible that some of the smaller parties like the ATM may begin to gain when you are counting the townships, but we should not take that to be something so dramatic. Parties tend to overstate their chances and prospects because they still have this subjective hope that something out of the bag is going to come. The trend is that they may increase, but that increase will not be dramatic.
All right, Prof, you say some parties punch above their weight, but what is the point of campaigning if people are not projecting themselves, as they keep on saying, as the president's in waiting, as the government in waiting? Well, let's find out now more from the party. Simphiwe Ngongwani on the floor. Simphiwe?
Well, thank you so much, Tsapi. So a very good evening to you and a warm welcome, especially our SABC2 audience. We're coming to you live from the floor of the IEC Results Operations Center. Some very interesting revelations that have come through this hour. And news just in, the National Freedom Party has just admitted defeat and thanked all its supporters for the support they've rendered throughout the election process. And as I spoke to the Acting Secretary General of the NFP yesterday, he did mention that there are so many issues that the party was grappling with, and they are working on a plan to deal with those issues. And another interesting revelation is that the Inkatha Freedom Party has just surpassed the Freedom Front Plus. They're now well over 300,000 on the national scale compared to the Freedom Front Plus with 274,632 votes. Capturing is at 67%, and about 10.6 million votes have been counted so far. Let me now chat to the leader of the Forum for Service Delivery, Mr. Mbahare J. Kekana. Mr. Kekana, very good evening to you and a warm welcome.
Evening. Let me also greet the viewers at home.
Now, your party has just scored 4,775 votes. 67% later, what are your impressions for this?
Our impression as Forum for Service Delivery is that we are not happy in terms of the freeness and the fairness of the elections, because a lot of irregularities has happened, and they are very, very deep in terms of their material effect. So we as Forum for Service Delivery, we have teamed up with other 30 political parties, and we are calling for an independent audit, whereby our members or whereby our parties will observe the whole process.
Before we get to that, what are some of these irregularities? I mean, you've been talking about certain irregularities, but you're not very clear. Which ones are those?
All right. For example, in the Northwest, people were given three ballot papers, and it's against the law. You must have two, and you use those two. There are people who have voted more than twice in a lot of stations. Like, for example, in Moretele, whereby people they will just go around and remove the ink and also come in and vote. So even this ink, it's removable, and it's something that is against the law.
So when you say some of the people have been given 3 ballot papers, what kind of proof do you have?
We are in contact with our party agents, and we've lodged a complaint from there. And also, there were about 19 people who have been arrested for...
I mean, what kind of proof do you have about such irregularities, as you just told us?
The numbers are not tallying. The numbers of people who voted in the voters' roll, they are not tallying. So we have lodged those kind of complaints.
So these are the irregularities that, I mean, these are the kind of complaints that your party has lodged, or collectively with the other parties?
These are some. There are so many. We as a forum, we are having more members. But if you can check the number there, it's not making sense.
So any feedback from the IEC?
We have given IEC until 9 o'clock tomorrow. Failure for them to come back to us, we'll take another step.
You chatted to my colleague earlier, Stephen Grotes, about the fact that you are lashing out at the media for having not given you all the, the coverage that you necessarily needed. What do you mean by this?
Remember, in terms of ICASA, we were given slots, both on media, the audio and the visual. And our slots, our adverts were not played. Our adverts were not even flighted. And I remember, and another these are parties that are getting grants to contest elections. So the grant is not even.
Mr. Kikana, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. I'm going to let you go for now and bring in a leader of the Women's Forum. Ma'am, a very good morning, a very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, sir. And our party is Women Forward, not Forum.
Okay, I beg your pardon. You have now scored 3,573. Are you at all impressed or happy?
We are not happy at all, more especially because of the irregularities that arose during the day with the IEC.
What kind of irregularities are you talking about?
Well, we had the PLC meeting today. The IEC confirmed to us that there were some irregularities in different stations, more especially in the Northwest, where people were given more than 3 ballot papers. Some of the deceased people also voted. Some of the people voted more than twice. And they accepted and admitted to that. And they also confirmed that they have arrested other people who were part of those things. But to our surprise, they took the results from those stations and brought them in front of us here.
I mean, I just spoke to the leader of the Forum for Service Delivery and asked him if he has documentary or video proof of those kind of irregularities, and it did not give me a clear answer. What kind of proof do you have? If the IEC were to ask you to adduce the burden of proof, what proof would you have?
We do have the video proof, and the IEC itself admitted to those irregularities. That is why they even say they arrested more than 20 people who did that. So we don't have a proof because they do have proof themselves.
Okay, so these irregularities are those that were spotted by your party or collectively with the other parties?
Collectively with other parties.
All right, Mayor, thank you so much. I'm going to let you go for now. We appreciate your time. Well, that was a leader of the Women's Forward. Yes, Mabosa Lidwaba. Let me just bring in the IFP's national spokesperson, Mr. Mkhuleko Hlengwa. A very good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
An absolute pleasure, Smil. Good evening to you and the viewers.
Well, an interesting development. If I look at the leaderboard up there, your party is trailing at 302,000 and it has just surpassed the Freedom Front Plus.
Yeah, we surpassed them a short while ago. It has been a long day because the results are just coming in very, very slowly. But we are quite positively happy about the fact that we are making now strides towards growth. I mean, the results are a reflection of that. And if you look at the map there, you'll be very clear that the white areas are the areas which have not been captured. And in the main, those would be IFP strongholds. And so that once those are in, we should be able to see a surge, and so it's good that that surge will come in on a very strong footing, is already reflected in the scoreboard now.
We are well over the half mark in terms of accounting. Now, do you have a clear picture how the IFP will fare?
Well, we can't preempt because the districts that are outstanding are actually quite big districts. It's quite a huge electorate that will be in those areas. So I'd say we should give it up until maybe 2 a.m. this morning, in the coming morning, that we'll know. But what I think is fundamentally important is that we're receiving these results on the backdrop, really, of some serious irregularities and concerns and shortcomings on the part of the IEC, and in an absence of credible explanations insofar as the IEC is concerned. On Tuesday night already, Prince Buthelezi was alerted to the fact that people were being bussed in from Swaziland and Mozambique to come and vote into the country. We alerted the IEC to that effect, and communication between Prince Buthelezi and Mr. Mashinini took place. But what has subsequently happened on election day, the fact that you had indelible ink rather, which was no longer indelible, you had a shortage of VEC forms, you had shortage of ballot papers, voting stations not opening on time, the zip machine not being live, and so on. And that has called into question the collective integrity of the vote, because people are now said to have voted twice or more, and then the arrests are a testament to that. And so this morning we submitted a memorandum to the IEC at the PLC meeting as the IFP, and that has given now rise to an expression to the current investigation and the sampling taking place to determine the extent to which the prevalence of this double voting took place. The issue is, though, Simpiwe and viewers, is that we have brought these issues to the attention of the IEC time and time again, and there's been no action. And our fundamental issue has always been that prevention is better than cure. It's useless to really afterwards want to speak about prosecution, whereas the systems, technical systems and expertise and capacity should be built into the system.
Okay. Unfortunately, we don't have much time, unfortunately. But before I let you go, we've been getting reports of a voter who's been shot dead outside the voting stations. What more information do you have with regards to it?
We have been alerted to that. It seems as if whilst voters were interacting and in some form or other, there was more than one party outside the place in question, and somebody fired a shot, and the IFP has lost a member. We have issued a statement, but we'll be issuing a comprehensive statement tomorrow once all the facts are before us and the police have come back to us with that, but we can't confirm that somebody was killed.
All right, Mkolego, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, the big issue here is the irregularities that have been highlighted and flagged by 30 political parties, and I've made several attempts to get in touch with the IEC. I've spoken to the national spokesperson of the IEC, and then she said that the entire IEC has been locked in meetings, and they referred me to the communications department, who refused to talk to me. But now let me bring in the national chairperson of the EFF, Advocate Dalimpofu, or is actually the deputy president. I beg your pardon. Very good evening to you, Mr. Thanks so much for joining us.
No, thank you for having us as well, yes.
Okay, first of all, I want your reaction with regards to how the EFF is faring now. It's scored well over 1 million votes. What's your reaction? What are your impressions to this?
No, look, we are inspired that we have reached the 1 million mark now, because in 2014, at this stage when it was 70% of the votes of the voting stations counted, we're far below 1 million. We're actually far below 500,000 votes. So now we're at this stage, and major metros have not yet been put on the board. More than half of Gauteng is not yet on the board, and you will know that Gauteng is one of our biggest contributions in terms of the voter base of the EFF. It gave us 450,000 votes in 2014, and it looks like in our own confirmation of results from voting stations, almost all VDs are doubling the numbers that we got in both 2014 and 2016. So that number is going to dramatically change and improve, because the EFF is a growing organization. And we're also inspired that we're the only organization that is growing much more significantly and emphatically as opposed to all other parties that are on the board there. You know that the ANC is expected to reach the 11 million. They're still at 6. It is not going to happen. Even with this Cyril Ramaphosa, whom they were saying that is the most popular, clean person, is going to be performing less than what Zuma achieved. That is one of the facts that people of South Africa must know, that Ramaphosa is going to be outdone by Jacob Zuma, whom they had said all sorts of things about, and Ramaphosa was portrayed as Mr. Clean, as a person who's going to save South Africa. But the voters of South Africa... Now, Floyd, just to interrupt you there, I see that 68% of the votes have been counted. Are the pieces of the puzzle now coming together? Do you have a clearer picture of how the EFF will fare?
It's not 68% of the votes that have been counted. It is 68% of the voting stations have been tallied. So we do not know yet how many votes have been casted by the people of South Africa. What we know is that the major and the bigger voting stations in the metros have not yet been tallied because the process of verification takes longer for the metropolitan areas. And if you check the previous results, the EFF always fares better in the metropolitan areas. We got more than 500,000 votes of the 1.1 million votes that we got in 2014 from the metropolitan areas. And we are confident that at the end of this process, the EFF would have recorded an emphatic growth, which is going to then redefine politics. And we are confident that there won't be an outright winner in Gauteng. So if there's anyone who thought that they must celebrate Gauteng, it's too early to celebrate because
just unfortunately we don't have much time. But before I let you go, other parties have been crying foul at the irregularities that they flagged, and you know, they basically saying that the entire process has been thrust into controversy. So what's your, and I do understand that the EFF and as well as the other parties have lodged complaints with the IEC. What kind of complaints are these?
Well, we don't have major complaints that have got material impact on the elections as the EFF. And those small parties must accept the results. Like, they never campaigned for elections. They can't now expect the board to tell them what they did not achieve on the ground. So the small parties must wait. They must stop disrupting the counting process and the verification process here. We do not want to be irritated by people who did not campaign. They thought that the success of the EFF that happened 8 months of its existence in 2014 is going to be replicated everywhere. It is not the case. The EFF had a clearer focus, a clear ideological posture, hard work and dedication. So they must not think that it will apply to all of them. It is only the EFF which is capable of achieving such huge success, not these small parties that are protesting here and irritating the people of South Africa.
Mr. Shivambu, we've been getting reports that your chairperson, Advocate Dalimpofu, has actually sent some of the EFF voters to vote twice as a means of testing the system. Would you authenticate these claims?
I do not know of such. I'm not aware of the chairperson having done anything of that nature. I'm not aware of such.
Mr. Shivambu, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for joining us. A very confident Floyd Shivambu, the Deputy President of the EFF, telling us that you know, they will do very, very well after the entire tally has been completed. They have now trailing at 1,055,000 votes, following closely after the DA with 2.4 million votes. Now, Tsepiso, let's now go back to you.
All right, thanks a lot for that, Simpiwe. And of course, we do have to say goodbye, but farewell to Professor Sobat Dr. Figena. I know you carry both titles, so I might just add another one as well. Thank you very much for your insights. And of course, we come back looking at the Western Cape. A good measure of those votes have been captured. The results at 92.7%. And the EFF very confident, saying that they see themselves as kingmakers. Well, they're third in the Western Cape, so we'll find out more about how that leaderboard is looking like. Right now, let's take you back to Flo in Johannesburg.
Thank you very much, Tsepi, and of course, Simpiwe there talking to us there from The Rock. Interesting conversations there that are being had by Simpiwe with some of those political party leaders, and the EFF saying, listen, all this foul play that's being spoken about by the smaller parties is irritating everybody, and that the smaller parties should actually keep quiet at this point. Well, we don't know about that. I don't think that they'll keep quiet about it, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more of the issues that the smaller parties are having. Right, so after the break, we're going to take you through province to province about the race for seats. I'll be counting with you and showing you what it looks like in terms of the race for seats at the national level, but also at the provincial, so that we can actually start to see those early predictions. And I will keep saying that at this point it is predictions. Of course, we don't have the total tally at this point. So do stay with us. More news, more analysis, and of course everything elections 2019 after the break. Do stay with SABC.
Get the facts first.
In 1994, I think was ons almal was ook baie excited geweest.
For South Africa, art was never a good thing.
From a footballing point of view, there was never a separation.
Get to the truth.
There's still some serious issues in South Africa.
Maar ek dink die regering kan regtig probeer om harder te werk om
ke apartheid in Sutlile ke le ke sola ke batho ba rena ba democracy batho ba batsho e seng makgowa.
See what it all really means.
Ek is geel, want dit is die kleur in die verkeerslig wat vir jou sê wees versigtig.
I still give South Africa a red.
We are somewhere in between. We're giving our democracy a green for sure. We're very happy.
Democracy Gauge, weekdays at 5:30 on SABC News, Channel 404.
Solani Mkiva says that they believe that the king should be released and that they are not being opportunistic.
The last 4 years, we have been engaging with government. It cannot be a post-colonial government that begins to jail a king in a context of what actually happened.
Bobby Solomons, he's the spokesperson of the Alex Shutdown Committee, the multi-billion rand Alexander Renewal Project. Nothing came of that.
Community wants to know what really happened to the money.
The creative director of the label, Mansu, that of course means black is beautiful in Sesotho. What has been your experience in that regard, given, you know, some of the more established labels that you have managed to work with?
It is hard. 15 years is a long time. There's a lot of sacrifice for your family to make for you.
This is the thing.
Without the brief.
This is it this morning. All right, it's 11 o'clock. Thank you very much for staying with us here on SABC News. Those joining us from SABC2, welcome to you as well as those joining us on Channel 404 DSTV. I'm Flola Duava, joining you from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg live. This is my final hour with you as report on those election results. Right, so coming up, we'll be crossing to Limpopo, to Belanger, checking on vote counting there. We'll also take you back, of course, to Pretoria, where my colleagues Wetlands in Puron and Moana are keeping me company throughout the night at the Results Operations Centre there. But first, let's take a look at your headlines at this hour. Vote rigging allegations are casting a dark shadow over the 2019 elections. The IEC is now calling on auditors to verify the vote after police arrested 19 people for double voting in Kwazulu-Natal.
We are sick and tired that people must rig an election.
Well, smaller parties are demanding a revote tonight after accusing the IEC of corruption. And some parties are celebrating an early victory while others are licking their wounds. All right, so of course, as I mentioned, I want to take you through the race for the seats, and we'll have those graphics up for you so we can paint a sort of clear picture for you of what's going on in terms of the seats. So this is a National Assembly, of course, 400 seats up for grabs at this point. You'll take a look there, as you see on our pie chart there, the ANC, 230. Remember, these are predictions, all right? I have to keep emphasizing these are early predictions. The ANC, 231 of those seats so far, the DA 84, EFF sitting at 41, IFP 14, and the FF Plus sitting at 10, and the other parties combined will be sitting at 20. So we'll take you through those percentages. That's of course at a 58.01% of voter districts counted. So which means that the ANC has 57.8% of that, DA 21%, EFF 10.2%, the IFP 3.5%, FF Plus 2.5%, and all the others 5%. And that's, of course, based on a 65.39% turnout. So that's for the National Assembly with those 400 seats that are up for grabs. These are predictions at the moment.
All right, I'm going to take you through to Limpopo then. The IEC says Limpopo has the lowest voter turnout in the country so far. Limpopo's voter turnout is currently hovering at around 58%. The IEC says that the province showing the highest voter turnout is Gauteng at 71%. That's based on over 65% of voting districts declared nationally. All right, let's take you then to Polokwane now, where our reporter Beatrice Mkhwale is standing by to take us through what's happening in Limpopo. Good evening to you, Beatrice. What's been happening in Limpopo? I see you at the IEC Centre there.
Well, good evening to you as well as the viewers at home. It was indeed a busy day here. We've seen the likes of Stan Mathabate and also other, party agents present here, to make sure and witness and see their parties, what is happening with that. And right now it's a bit quiet. As you can see behind me, some party agents, they've left already. It's just some that are, sticking here just to make sure that they see what is happening with regard to their parties until, the counting is done. And also the IEC officials also, some have left. It's just a few that are still remaining here. It has been a very quiet evening indeed. And we know that here in Limpopo, ANC, EFF and DA, are the top three in the race. And knowing that EFF at some stage, they indicated that they're planning, to get over 50% of votes in this province. Right now I'm going to speak to the provincial chairperson, Josie Putane, just for them to tell us are they going to meet that target? Are they happy with where they are at the moment, bearing in mind that vote counting is still happening? Mr. Josie Putane, thank you so much for joining us. Your leader, EFF, Julius Malema, indicated that you guys are planning, to get over 50% of voters vote in this province at this point in time. Do you think you'll still be able to meet that target, bearing in mind that vote counting still continues?
We're very happy with the reception our people gave us. The numbers that you already see here indicates without doubt that we are increasing. We entered in this battle to win. We are not going back on our words. We did not mix them. And we are still resolved that we are going to meet our target. It is because of the campaigns we have put in this battle to win these elections. We're not getting into these elections for a marriage. We are getting into these elections to win. And we are humbled by the numbers that our people continue to give us. The numbers that you see and the percentage that we have, that of 13% by this time, when we have not even reached 50%, tells you that the EFF is growing extremely stronger. You can't doubt your growth. That is why we are even saying, even at this point, we are already the winner, because by indication it means all the arrows of other organizations are facing down, and is the arrow of the EFF that is facing up, growing.
All right, thank you so much, Josie. And that was a provincial chairperson for EFF, Josie Putane, saying that they will surely meet that target of 50% voters in this province. And we know that this year we've seen, a number of new kids on the block. We're talking about the likes of ATM, ACM, and Good. To come to surprise, Good in this province, we haven't seen them, canvassing for votes, but they're sitting at about 0.0% in this province. I'm going to speak to Vuma Shudu from Good. Thank you so much for speaking to us. You are now at 0.03%. What was your prediction in terms of this year's election? Did you think you'll be at that point, bearing in mind that we didn't see much of Good canvassing for votes in this province?
Yeah, I think up to so far, the performance really reflects the fact that we started very late, and we had a lot of things to put in place. But for sure, that is not what we are proud about. We know very well that we are capable, and we are happy that for now we have made a mark. Because remember, our people have been cheated for many times. So when you are a new kid, they ask you a lot of questions. You have to do a lot of explaining. So it needs time to explain yourself. But we are happy that now we are known.
And terms of predictions, where do you see yourself?
No, I think for these elections we may not do a lot of surprise, but we know very well that this is the starting point.
Thank you so much. And that is Vumashudu from Gorgeous, saying that, there are new kids in the block. There'll be a lot of questions asked to them, but, they're saying that as time goes on, they will make their mark. And as you can see, people are leaving here at around this time. Certainly we'll see them coming back tomorrow as the vote counting continues. And that's all from me here and Polokwane. It's back to you in studio.
All right, thank you very much, Beatrice, talking to us from Limpopo there. Let me just take a look at the situation in Limpopo when it comes to the votes. So we are sitting at a 47.29% of the results captured at the moment then. So still a long way to go in Limpopo, but let me just tell you what it's looking like at the moment. 76.45% for the ANC, 12.94% for the EFF, and we've got the DA coming in at 5.6%. I think it's important just to tell you about the smaller parties as well. And I suppose one wouldn't call them the smaller parties, but the other parties coming in outside of the top three. You've then got the FF Plus sitting at 1.71%, and then you've got the APC at 0.34% and the ACDP at 0.33%, and then the Civic Warriors of Maruleng, which is 0.31%. Then interestingly, ATM also came in there at 0.25% and COPE at 0.21%. Of course, that's at 47.29% of those votes having been counted thus far, but really the ANC having that strong early lead at 76.45%, pardon me. So that's the situation then in Limpopo, and of course Beatrice Magwale standing by there to keep us updated as to what's happening in Limpopo. When we get back, I will give you again that race for the seats. We're going to go from province to province, so do stay with us here on SABC as we give you up-to-the-minute live coverage of the elections 2019. Do stay with us.
Hey, Baba. You've been partying the whole night.
You complain a lot, man. If it's not the leaves, then it's the noise.
I've asked you so nicely before. Now I'm calling my lawyer.
Ooh, I am so scared. And like, where's your lawyer?
My lawyer is right here.
Problems with the neighbors, rental disputes, advice on maintenance matters, drawing up a will. Clientele Legal will speak up for you. SMS DEFEND to 32281. We'll call you back.
This is the SABC News Channel, independent and impartial.
When news happens around the world, we will bring it to you. We will keep you informed. Each day, every day, our news team digs deeper, getting all the facts to provide comprehensive reports to what's important to you. We cover all corners of the globe. SABC News, independent and impartial.
Solani Mkiva says that they believe that the king should be released and that they are not being opportunistic.
The last 4 years, we have been engaging with government. It cannot be a post-colonial government that begins to jail a king in a context of what actually happened.
Bobby Solomons, he's the spokesperson of the Alex Shutdown Committee, the multi-billion rand Alexander Renewal Project. Nothing came of that.
Community wants to know what really happened to the monies.
The creative director of the label, Mansu, that of course means black is beautiful in Sesotho. What has been your experience in that regard, given some of the more established labels that you have managed to work with?
It is hard. 15 years is a long time. There's a lot of sacrifice for your family to make for you.
This is the thing.
Without the brief.
This is it this morning.
Right, it's 12 minutes past 11. Thank you very much for choosing SABC. Of course, we're giving you that coverage throughout all our provinces. And we're going to move to Belanger now, where the ANC is the runaway leader in that province with vote counting at about 74%. The ANC has won 68% thus far of those votes. Now, that's 10 percentage points lower than 2014. The EFF has doubled its results, though, from 2014, scoring over 12% of the votes. Let's cross now to that province where our reporter Pepile Kunene is standing by for us. You're in Mbombela at the IEC Centre there. Good evening to you, Sipe, and I understand that you'll be talking to some of the smaller parties there that are represented. What do you have for us?
Yes, we're coming to you live from the IEC in Mbombela. We'll be talking to the smaller parties representative. They are represented by Sipho from Riawosa. They're complaining about a number of things. They want to know if there will be arrests made for those people that have voted twice, because there are already about 2-3 cases that have been reported, but no arrests have been made as yet. And as well as that, the marking ink that was used has vanished. Some of the people were able to vote twice because that ink couldn't stick. But Sipho has more on that. Sipho, you just had a meeting with the IEC to sort of sort out this issue. How far did you go? What is it that you're complaining about?
Good evening to you and the viewers at home. We indeed had a meeting this evening at 9 p.m. With the IEC here in Mpumalanga. Our concerns are the concerns that are now all over the media and also surfacing throughout the country. That number one, there's the issue that people manage to vote more than once. Number two, it is very much clear that when you look at the issues of the ballot box, they are all over the place and they are unguarded. In one incident in Komazi, the IEC official was caught with 3 boxes without supervision or monitoring. So these are the issues that to us as emerging political parties contesting these elections, we are very much concerned that at the end, the accumulative effect of these discrepancies may suggest that the elections are not fair.
Okay, now, what do you want the IEC to do now? Now that we are here, we are at 79% with the vote counting. What do you want the IEC to do moving forward? As smaller parties, we can see the ANC is not complaining, EFF is not complaining, DA is not complaining, but you, as we go down with the list, are complaining. What are you expecting from the IEC?
Thank you very much. It is a tragedy to our democracy that those who seem to be benefiting from the discrepancies don't see the need to complain. You see, we are not complaining because we want to benefit ourselves. It is to the benefit of our democracy that the processes be fair and free, be transparent. Now, what we expect from IEC, in our meeting, IEC has already acknowledged that there are gaps, but they seem not to be holding the same view as us as to the extent and the seriousness of those discrepancies. Those discrepancies to us, where a person has managed to vote more than once, is a serious discrepancy to us, and we expect IEC to come to bring about a recourse to that, to say, for example, if indeed the extent of this discrepancy would suggest that the elections be rerun, or before the rerunning or while preparing for the rerunning of the elections, we agree that we go to a government of national unity. All the parties that participated in the elections form that government of national unity, and then the next step is we begin to prepare for the next elections.
Okay, thank you, sir. The smaller parties are basically saying they want a rerun of this. They're not happy with the way in which things have been run by the IEC. Moving forward, they are calling for this, what's happening here, to be considered null. And then we will move on to the PAC. Now we'll be speaking to Walter Likuleni. Walter has a lot to say about these elections. Tell us more, Walter.
Thank you. I think firstly we need to debunk the myth that we are smaller parties. All the parties that come into the election pay the same amount of money to participate. They meet the same criteria. It is required of each and every party that participates to meet the same requirements. Therefore, there's no smaller party when it comes to elections. Secondly, maybe it is based on what has happened in the past as to who got so many votes in the past. But coming to the current elections, we believe that as a party, we echo the same sentiment of all other parties that are raising a concern. We are saying you cannot have multi-party voting, multi-party democracy that is deemed to be credible when there is multi-voting by individuals. Because as we stated, how many people can you actually confirm voted twice? There are incidences that have been raised with the IEC. The IEC seems, in Mpumalanga specifically, seems to be playing a role of a sounding board, not of a role of solving the problems. We still say, as the PAC, that for these elections to be credible, you need to have a fair system where if there are 10 people voting, it should be 10 votes that are counted. You can't have a situation where 10 people vote twice and then you have 20 votes. It's a serious problem. There's been an issue about the election observers. We need to say, as the PAC, it's very clear that election observers look at the freeness of the election on the basis of violence towards elections, during elections and post-elections. And the knowledge that they come up with in terms of observing, their argument has always been that if people have not been prevented from going to vote, people have not been killed after the elections, people are not killed during the elections, then the elections are free. But being fair is based on numbers. We are saying if the system has failed, where what was needed to be an indelible ink is no longer indelible, it can be removed, where a system where should have been able to prevent a voter going twice into a voting station or even more than twice is not working, then that system is not good. Therefore, our appeal has been, there's two processes that we have asked. We have said to the IEC, we believe that the discrepancies are big enough to call for a rerun of the elections. But as a stopgap measure, we support the motion where we say there's been 27 parties that are participating. The seats in this province are 30. Maybe we should go on a government of national unity where we prepare to run credible elections where people don't have the chance to cheat the system. We accept that there are those who are benefiting from the proceeds of crime, and they would not complain.
Okay, you also complained about the IEC not being objective in the whole thing. You accused them of not being fair. How far has that gone? After you had the meeting, do you iron that out?
We're not able to iron it out. Like I said, they acted as a sounding board because all they said to us was that they hear us, they'll escalate whatever problems we have with them to national IEC, and national IEC will take a decision. Our understanding is that as a provincial IEC, dealing with parties contesting in the provincial elections, they should be able to take a decision. If they are unable to take a decision, what are they here for?
Oh, okay, thank you. That was the PAC complaining about what they call discrepancies and gaps that came with these elections, of which they are calling on the IEC to do something about it, failing which these elections won't be considered as fair. Now we're speaking to Sbusiso Nkosi, who's from the IEC. The smaller parties are complaining. What's the stand of the IEC?
Yeah, like I said earlier, Pepile, I said I will come back to you to tell you about the progress of our capturing here. Like I promised you earlier, I told you that around 10 o'clock will be around 80%, and we've managed to do that. What the political parties are talking about, they have understood what our management has replied to them, and what our position is as the provincial office, and I think they will follow suit and implement what management has promised, or rather has directed them to do. But talking about our business, yeah, we are just over 80%. And yeah, I promise you that around Saturday, as promised, we'll be able to deliver 100% of the results.
Now, who's at the front? How is it going? All along, it was ANC, EFF, DA, Freedom Front Plus, BRA. How is it happening now?
Yeah, the results are still sketchy. It's not complete. The picture is not yet a full picture. It will start taking shape once we have, some of the bigger municipalities, results being tallied. So, yeah, I can't say now which party is leading, and then tomorrow something changed, and then, you say it's Busiso is a liar. But, yeah. Yeah, I think everything is going well. We'll speak tomorrow, and then I promise you that we'll have a better picture.
Talking about municipalities, how many municipalities have finished counting? When we spoke earlier, we were at 6. You were waiting for the 7th to submit. How far has it gone now?
We now currently have tallied 9 municipalities. Others are continuing to audit their results and continue to capture. So, yeah. Things will change, as I promised you. We'll spend our second day without sleep here until we deliver the results to the people of Mpumalanga.
Just a brief idea, just an idea, which municipalities are those? I know you counted Victor Kanye earlier. Which others have submitted now?
Kondo has submitted, Pixliga Seme has submitted, Dipaliseng has submitted. We have Tabachiu, we have Msugalikwa, or rather, we have Albert Lutuli. Yeah, a host of a lot of municipalities have submitted. Only those which are bigger, like Nkomazi, Mbombela, and Bushbuck Ridge, are still lagging behind. But yeah, we'll get there.
Give us an idea how many municipalities we have in Mpumalanga so that maybe we can work out how many are left if you are at the number that you're mentioning now.
Yeah, like I said, we've got 17 municipalities. We've now tallied 9, and now we're left with 8.
Thank you so much. That was Sibusiso Nkosi from the IEC here in Nelspruit. What's worth noting is that all along the BRA, Better Residents Association from Bushbuck Ridge, was just on the heels of the EFF, but this time around, as the results trickle in, they are just after Freedom Front Plus. Freedom Front Plus has surpassed them. And another thing is that the EFF continues to be just after the ANC. So right now we are, the picture looks like the ANC at the top, EFF, DA, then the Freedom Front Plus, and then BRA, and then the other smaller parties, even though they don't want to be called smaller parties, are coming through. Back to you, Florence, in studio.
Right. Thank you so much, Supepile. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say now because we have been saying the smaller parties, and you would have heard there the PAC representative saying that we need to debunk the myth of smaller parties because they pay exactly the same as all other parties when it comes to registering. Well, this is a very interesting thing to say. But I guess when we say smaller parties, we're talking about in terms of support, right? I think it's a fair enough thing to say in terms of that. All right, let's take you through to Mpumalanga Legislature. Right, you can see you have the graphic there up for you on the screen right now. The Mpumalanga Legislature has 30 seats up for grabs, and you will see there the green, the majority of which will go to the ANC. There's 22 seats there, and of course, as I say, these are predictions based on the 63.6% voter districts counted as thus far. So the ANC at 22 seats out of that 30, the EFF having 4, and the DA at 3 seats, and the FF Plus at 1. And then you'll see there the other parties combined. Well, it's a 0 there. I'm sure it will be a 0 point something. But in any case, when we talk about the percentages, it means that the ANC is at 73.3%, and the EFF at 13.3%, and the DA 10%, FF Plus at 3.4%. And just a reminder that in Mpumalanga, of course, that voter turnout was at 66.65%. Right, so that's what it's looking like in the Mpumalanga legislature thus far, based on predictions. That's for the race for seats in that legislature. All right, and we're going to take a short break for now, and after the break I'm going to take you back to The Rock, the IEC Centre in Pretoria with Tshepiso Makwetla and Simphiwe Ngongwane. Of course, they're taking a look at that leaderboard, having some analysis there, as well as speaking to the parties that are there at the floor at the moment. So do stay with SABC.
We're explorers. We always have been, endlessly curious, always looking for answers, for new frontiers, for new stories. Because that is who we are. From script to screen, from yelling action to taking you on a journey. Radio producers, script writers, on-air presenters, news reporters, sports analysts. We spend late nights creating captivating storylines and earlier mornings keeping you informed, educated, and entertained. For us, it's not a job, it's a calling. We do this and more because you do your part. SABC TV licenses, made possible by you.
All right, it's going for 11:30, and of course we're keeping you updated with all those election results. We understand from the IEC that we'll know officially really what's happening hopefully on Saturday. So let me take you through to the Rock, where Tshepiso Makwetla and Simphiwe Ngongwane are standing by, and of course we'll get some analysis as well as updates on the school board at the moment, as well as chatting to some of those political parties that are there at the moment. So good evening then to you, Tshepi.
Thanks a lot, Flo, and a very good evening once again from Pretoria, the Results Operations Centre of the IEC. It's been a day of high drama, as you've seen it play out here at the IEC Results Operations Centre, especially when it comes to the credibility of the vote. The IEC eventually saying that, of course, it's going to audit the results. A sample has been put out, and they'll come back to us and tell us about that. Of course, the parties looking at the leaderboard very, very intently. We're looking at the Western Cape now. As you can see, 93.29% of the results have been captured. And just looking at the district map here, you can see what is outstanding is this part here. This is the city of Cape Town, which my resident analysts say here's a large swath of the population that is voting. So we'll find out more about that in just a moment. But the whole point is just to let you know what it is that we'll be looking at when we come back, the fight for seats in the big metros. Let's find out now from Simphiwe what else we're looking at.
Well, thank you, Tshepiso, and a very good evening to you, and a warm welcome to the floor of the IEC at the Results Operations Centre, coming to you live from Pretoria. The mood on the floor is quite an electric one. Quite a bigger number of the media contingent has now settled on the floor, speaking to the various political parties to get their views as to how their parties are faring as according to the leaderboard. Now, I'm joined by the Secretary General for the African Content Movement, Mr. Romeo Ramuwada. A very good evening to you, Romeo. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
No, thank you very much. Good evening to you and your listeners, your viewers. Yeah, thank you very much.
Now, your party has just scored 2,508 votes. Now, that's a far cry from the kind of promises that your leader, Hlaudu Motsoeneng, has made, that he will definitely unseat President Cyril Ramaphosa.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And obviously, the president, like any other leader of the party, when we campaign, you don't just campaign to become in opposition, you campaign to become the next government. Yeah, and the president has pushed all the leaders of the party around the country to work very, very hard, including our volunteers. So we work very hard. So that's why us as the African Content Movement, these results that are here, we don't understand these results. We don't know where they come from. That's why together with the other opposition parties, we have indicated that we are not accepting these rigged results because from the start of the results, we've seen irregularities in terms of how certain parties have been getting votes. And we're saying it's practically impossible. We've got a lot of members as a party, more than registered, more than 50,000, in our offices. So there is no way that we are going to get 2,000 votes. And we've been working the ground day in and day out. So we have lodged complaints, of course, yes, with the IEC, because we have indicated that there is a lot of irregularities. And as the ACM and other political parties, we realized that the IEC was not attending to our issues. Until today, we reached the final point where we said that no, enough is enough. We're not here to escort any other parties. We are here representing our members. And our members who have voted for the ACM, they are probably watching right now. They are also surprised what is happening. Because really this 2,000 is not the results that the party is supposed to get here.
I had a brief chat with you off camera, and I do get the sense that you are of the view that had it not been for these alleged irregularities on the part of the IEC, then you would have scored a 2/3 majority.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm of the view that, yes, if it wasn't of the irregularities of the IEC, the ACM will have done very, very well. Because we know there's been ballot papers that have been going around with people in their cars, and there are people who are voting, like in the Northwest, our leaders that side have reported that there are people who are voting with more than 3-4 ballot papers. We know that there are people who voted more than twice across the country.
Do you have proof? Do you have video evidence, photographs, or documentary evidence of this?
Yes, we have. We are very confident that we are going to win this particular case because we do have proof. And as the opposition parties, we are more than 30 parties. We are not crazy. We cannot just say we don't accept these results. We don't have a problem with any party that is doing well. But we have proofs. We have receipts, slips of those people who have voted more than once. In fact, even in the social media, the proof is there. And we do have pictures, we do have videos of some of the officials of the IEC filling the ballot papers after the elections. So we are saying as the ACM, these elections are very questionable, and we are going to challenge them without apologizing or fear, because we are a political party. We are not here to escort any party. In fact, we are not even intimidated by any party because we believe that we've got members. We run rallies, and our members are there. We are not running a campaign on Facebook. We are going door to door. We are engaging our people. So we are not a party that is just going to say we accept what we are given. We are saying these particular results must be verified by an independent auditor. We need to know how many people have been registered to vote, how many have been scanned, and also the other.
So where to from here? What is it that you're going to do from here?
What we have done already as the opposition parties that represent an agenda to change the lives of African people, we have already written a letter to the IEC. We have told the IEC that we are giving them until tomorrow, that we are demanding that we get an independent auditor. These results must be audited, and also we're demanding a rerun of the elections. Yes, because we believe South African democracy mustn't be on paper and on TV and radio. It must be on the ground. So we're demanding that South Africans must be allowed to elect the government of their choice.
Okay, Romeo, thank you so much. I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. And I'm going to invite in Solimalatsi, the national spokesperson for the Democratic Alliance. That was Romeo Ramuwada. He is the Secretary General of the African Content Movement. Now, if you'll recall that the leader of this party, promised that he'll definitely garner a 2/3 majority and unseat President Cyril Ramaphosa and change his address from whatever it is now to the union buildings. Now, the party has just scored 2,507 votes. Let me also invite the Freedom Front, Mr. Jaco Mulder from the Freedom Front Plus. Gentlemen, a very good, it's actually Philip van Staden. All right, I beg your pardon. A very good evening to you and welcome.
Good evening, it's a pleasure to be here.
Welcome, Mr. Staden.
A very good evening.
All right. Now, I'm going to start with you, the Democratic Alliance, Mr. van Staden, 2,456,350. How do you feel? What's your impression of this?
Well, you can see our numbers of 278,000. If you look at the voting stations, more than 88 voting stations with Freedom Front Plus has actually won throughout the Northern Province and some parts of Gauteng. It's interesting to see that we as a Freedom Front bite some chunks over there, our voters there. There's many factors to it. We will see tomorrow when the Tshwane Metro come out and parts of Ekurhuleni and Mogale City and Johannesburg as well. We've picked up already from our party agents last night when some of the Tshwane Metro results came through to us via SMS. But where some videos where the DA was big in charge in 2014, we've actually taken over that video, but that results will be still busy calculating, and that will be shown tomorrow. So that's a very interesting factor. The other factor on that matter is that some people feel that some policies in the DA is not for them anymore. They feel alienated, and then they went back to the Freedom Front Plus, where they actually started in 1994, went to the DA, and they went back to us in this election.
Okay, Soli, I would like your reaction in just a moment, but before I go to Soli, Mr. Moana Mulder, the Western Cape leader of the Freedom Front Plus, has attributed such a meteoric rise to the fact that more minorities have been accommodated. Which are these minorities?
Well, it's across the board. You can see our votes is not coming from whites only. It's from Indians, coloureds, all minority groups we're getting votes from. But I think the big chunks we're biting off from the DA, especially the Pretoria area, if you're going to look at the Pretoria Mood area, is especially Afrikaners who went after 94's election to the DA and come back home now.
So let me bring into this conversation. He's saying that most of the members, he's attributed the meteoric rise of the Freedom Front Plus to the fact that most of the DA members have defected from the party to the Freedom Front Plus as a result of bullying tactics about the DA.
Bullying tactics, I'd stand to be convinced about that. I think what we are seeing is that, as part of global trends towards a shift towards movements and organizations that mobilize largely on racial nationalism and racially polarizing society, that there is an uprise of those movements, either on the right-hand side with Freedom Front or on the left with movements such as PLF and the Land Party. And we have chosen to stay in the middle because we believe in building this rainbow nation, and our electoral offer was about uniting South Africans. If that means in the process of doing so there are certain prices that we have to pay as part of growth, I think it is necessary in order to remain loyal to the vision of building one South Africa for all that resembles the rainbow nation that the democratic order brought to South Africa.
I was listening to an interview earlier on radio by Mr. Jaco Mulder, who was saying that the DA has now lost the plot. They have now adopted a more populist approach. They don't have ideas anymore.
I think that's complete nonsense. You can see based on the number of votes and the fact that we've still retained the Western Cape that our message still has broader appeal in society, and the fact that we're continuing to grow in areas where we didn't have such growth, particularly amongst black South Africans, and that we are not just a party for one race. We are a party for white South Africans, we are a party for Indian South Africans, we are a party for black South Africans, and we are a home for all those South Africans that remain committed to building this rainbow nation. And it's because of our ideas and what we stand for that South Africans are resonating with our message. We went into this election with 5 key promises of fighting corruption, of making sure that we'll ultimately deliver a home in every job. And these are ideas that resonate with South Africans because they speak to the real challenges that South Africans are facing.
Well, we all know that the Democratic Alliance let go of Patricia de Lille, but she's not doing so bad after all, because she's now got 68,622,000 votes on the national scale. Does the DA regret this?
Look, Ms. de Lille made her choices, and she has to live with the choices that she has made. If you see our results in the Western Cape and compare it with what good got, you can see that the impact is too minuscule to even call it a contributory factor. We are just grateful that in the Western Cape we've got this opportunity again of governing through an outright majority so that we can continue with our program of good governance there.
What's your impression of the overall voting process? There's been allegations of rigging by the IEC and irregularities.
Yeah, since yesterday morning we have received a lot of complaints from people on ground level at voting stations. Scanner machines not working, ballot papers not delivered in time, voting stations open 2 hours late, ballot boxes found on the N4 at the Cullinan and off-ramp, and we submitted those complaints to the IEC, and by lunchtime yesterday afternoon, and most of 80% of that was resolved. We're still waiting to hear about a matter with ballot boxes which was found on the N4 Cullinan off-ramp. We're still following up on that. We haven't received an answer yet from the IEC. The Freedom Front Plus stand of view on this matter is all these allegations must be investigated. Investigations must be launched, because if investigations is not been launched, people will start saying, like the smaller parties earlier today, but said this election is not free and fair. Freedom Front Plus said, let's investigate the matters.
You know, Philip, I'm more than tempted to call the land issue the elephant in the room, because some of the political pundits have been saying that the reason that your party is doing so well is because of the massive support from especially the white farmers. Is that the case?
Well, if you look at where we had to win the VDs across the country, it's not only farmers. Some of those VDs, most of those VDs actually are in the cities. But it's not only about the land expropriation without compensation that the people were streaming to us. As I said earlier, some policies of the DA, which some people wasn't more relaxed now and came back home with us. And we have said in our manifesto that we want to build a better South Africa for all who lived in it. We said we're going to reduce the cabinet from 35 members to 16 members. And we said we're going to do the infrastructure, the education, all those matters which is putting South Africa in a diarrhea. We're going to fix, and we said it in our manifesto. And the people liked what we said in the manifesto, and that we have put in the manifesto, we're going to take into a coalition government, whether it's on national level or in provincial level.
Now, the DA is one of the parties that lodged complaints with the IEC. What are some of these complaints and alleged irregularities?
Well, we have brought to the attention of the IEC the irregularities that were commonly reported through the course of yesterday. Instances such as, suspicions of double or multiple voting as a result of people not being marked off, people who had registered at one particular voting station but ended up voting at another station, not getting the forms that they needed to fill in order for them to vote there. And we have brought all of this to the IEC, and through engagements in the parliament, in the multi-party liaison committee yesterday and today, we had made a submission for an audit. We had called for a full audit. The IEC concluded that they would do an audit of a sample of those complaints. We still believe that that is a reasonable intervention, and contrary to the steps that's being recommended and propagated by the other parties, we believe that as a party that proposed for the audit in good faith, it is necessary to give that process a chance of producing an outcome so that we can interrogate the outcome and satisfy ourselves that it is consistent with the corrective measures that the IEC needed to institute, because ultimately we don't want this election to have any risk associated with it.
But do you have any proof? Do you have your own proof that you can present to the IEC, or are you simply relying on the evidence that has been brought forward by the other parties?
No. We have submitted our own proof where we have gathered it in collaboration with our party agents, who are the individuals that have brought these cases to us, and we have logged them through the online system that the IEC had running during the course of the day yesterday. So that is the evidence that we have submitted to the IEC, and that is what has to now compelled the IEC to reach a conclusion that an audit is necessary.
All right, gentlemen, I'm going to let you go. Soli Malatsi, the DA spokesperson, and as well as Philip van Staden. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I'm going to let you go for now. All right, that was the national spokesperson of the Democratic Alliance, Soli Malatsi, speaking to us about how the party has performed, and as well as the Gauteng leader of the Freedom Front Plus, Mr. Philip van Staden, just reacting to how the party has fared. I mean, looking at the scores right now, the party has now scored 279,221, and it is a surprise to everyone because of this meteoric rise, because it's now the fourth largest party, if these figures are anything to go by. 10,931,882 votes have been counted so far. Well, on the issue of the land, well, he's saying that that's not the main reason why the party is doing so well, because in some of the areas where there aren't so many farm workers, or rather white farmers, well, the party is doing just as well. And then on the issue of whether the Freedom Front is actually doing well as a result of some of the DA members who've defected, he's saying that is absolute nonsense. Well, that was Mr. Philip van Staden, and as well as Soli Malatsi. We'll be speaking to some more parties as the vote counting process is in progress. But for now, Tsepiso, I'm going to hand it back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Simpiwe, speaking to the Freedom Front Plus. And we mentioned earlier on with our resident analysts that they seem to be pushing out what has been traditionally part of the top five that you would find the IFP and UDM. But the Democratic Alliance's Solima Ladzi, they're also speaking about the objections that they've lodged with the IC. So all the parties that seem to say that there is real evidence of some sort of malfeasance are saying that there is proof to back it up. But we mentioned earlier on, let me introduce you to my resident analyst, Paul Berkowitz, Mr. Paul Berkowitz, who is a researcher and political analyst. Dr. Dirk Kotze, you met earlier on. He's been with me taking us through the various provinces, the importance of the results that we're seeing. And we mentioned earlier on, before we went on to Simpiwe, that we'd look at the Western Cape. So the Western Cape, we mentioned the fact that quite a significant portion of those votes have been counted. As you can see, over 1 million of those votes counted, 54.98% for the Democratic Alliance, the ANC at 28.95%, the EFF at 3.98%. So those are the results. And just to take you to what we're seeing, the number of results captured, the voting districts captured, that is a very important figure. Please note that 1.4 million. And I want to look at the total valid votes. That's at 1,860,726. So let's just then zoom in to this district map. And what we're seeing here is a significant portion of the city of Cape Town, those votes still outstanding, and big metro. So that means, are we likely to see a major shift in what we have here in terms of the overall support? No? Gentlemen? Paul?
If past results are anything to go by, the DA has done better in the last couple of election rounds in the metro and in that outstanding area than it has in the rest of the province. So if those trends hold and nothing's really changed, if anything, the DA should improve on its current standing a little bit by the time the final results are in.
The Good Party made a very strong play for the votes in the Western Cape, particularly the metro. Some would have said the predominantly white votes. And we obviously haven't seen any showing of them, just looking at the map in terms of the top five parties. But as we can see, just going down so that our viewers will be able to see, the top five seems to have the Good Party there, number 4, ACDP at number 5. Dirk Kotze, what are your thoughts? What has been the swing votes? What are the results or the driving force behind those swing votes?
Well, the party that has lost votes is the DA, because in the previous election they had a total of around about 59%. Now it is around about 54%. The CSIR believes it will come to a point at around about 55%. So it means that they've lost around about 4%. I think what we are seeing is that the Good Party, which is a new party, so that 3% is a total win for them, from 0 to 3%. And I guess we can say that that 3% comes mainly from the DA. The Freedom Front Plus has also made some gains, and therefore the losses of the DA, I would say, is split between the Good Party and the Freedom Front Plus party.
Do you think the Cape Party will get a seat, at least in the Western Cape Legislature? Your thoughts, Paul?
So, Professor, just refresh my memory. How many seats are in the legislature?
I think it's the maximum is normally 80. So, but the Western Cape hasn't. It's 80 seats there also.
Okay. So, if they divided proportionately, to get 1 out of 80 seats, you would need approximately, to be guaranteed of 1 seat, you'd need about 1.25% of the vote. And then you'd say, okay, I've got 1 seat out of an 80-seat legislature. At the moment, the Cape Party is sitting on about a third of that. They're sitting at below half of 1%. They'd need to really make gains, or the allocation of seats, the calculation, which can be quite arcane and quite technical and a little bit random and lucky, they might get a seat.
Okay, so I want us to look at annual income of people in the Western Cape. That's at 30,000 average annual income. But at the top end of it, you have somebody who earns 2.5 million of it, right? A very small portion. And the highest number, that is 21% of residents in the Western Cape earning about 20K annually. It's often been said this is one of the most divided provinces in the country. The city of Cape Town, one of the most unequal. What we're seeing here, is that borne out? Just in terms of how many people voted ANC, who voted DA. We don't even see much of the EFF at this point, but obviously still a large number of votes that are expected to come in.
That division, if we're talking about the metro, as you said, a lot of that vote is still outstanding. If we just go by the last two electoral cycles, if we look at the 2016 municipal elections, not strictly comparable, but interesting, the poorer parts of the city, the less developed and the more removed from infrastructure have traditionally been ANC voters, but the EFF ate into that vote a little bit in areas in wards like Khayelitsha in 2016. The EFF picked up as much as 5 and in one or two memorable cases 7 or 8% of the vote in some of those wards.
We did speak earlier on, we spoke about the phenomena of identity voting, and I want us to look at the Eastern Cape because we were looking at the turnout there earlier on, and we noted the fact that the UDM didn't do quite as well as some expected. There are the results there. UDM at 2.60% of the support in the Eastern Cape. And we did look earlier on at the district map, Nelson Mandela Bay. What would have happened there? Because there's an interpretation that they were being punished.
I think when we look at the Eastern Cape, it's possibly the province that is the most divided in terms of different identities in regional senses. You know, we also have to remind ourselves it's the province with 2 former homelands. That in itself is a product of sort of identity politics. At the same time, if we look at the Nelson Mandela Bay metropolitan area, we have seen, you know, the politics of it since 2016 between the DA on the one hand, the ANC on the other hand, and then, for example, the Patriotic Alliance and the UDM also. And how it has become, in a sense, an unstable situation because it has become such a mix within the metro. But once you move beyond the metro areas, then it becomes more, in a sense, homogeneous within the regions. So we are seeing, for example, here on the map, that the ANC is very much dominant in the northern eastern part of the Eastern Cape, while the DA is more prominent in the southern western part of the province.
But is there a firm understanding of identity politics or a monolithic one? Just if we're talking identity politics and the UDM, some say they would have expected to perform better, as some say they would have expected the IFP to perform better in Kwazulu-Natal. The fact that we've seen better performance for the Freedom Front Plus and the loss for support for the Democratic Alliance in certain strategic places. So, strictly speaking, our understanding of identity politics, is that playing out?
I think to take one step back, identity politics, it can be quite a complex thing, and it can speak to different parts of a constructed identity. When we talk about the UDM or the IP around identity politics, we could be touching on geography, because traditionally those parties have been, especially in recent elections, more geographically concentrated in their support. It could be about language, which is often the one can be a proxy for the other, because, as the professor said, because of enforced segregation in homelands, people who spoke a certain language, who shared a certain culture, were concentrated and sometimes forced to be concentrated in certain areas. There are other parties where the identity politics could also be around language and ethnicity, but are more geographically diverse. So, to use the Freedom Front Plus as an example, that party support is not concentrated in just one province. And there are also examples of parties that are like the ones in the first group that haven't done well or stood the test of time, such as the United Christian Democratic Party, which you would associate with an area like the Northwest, you would associate with a language such as Setswana. So I guess there are a lot of parties that have been closely linked with identity politics that have fallen by the wayside, and the two that we're talking about that have survived that, and in this election, in the case of the Freedom Front Plus, have thrived. The one is the IFP, and the one is the Freedom Front Plus specifically. And in both cases, you could say that, depending on how long a memory and a history you want to go back, the IFP has survived, but it still is only recovering the losses in the last election to the NFP in 2014. We're not even talking.
And that is another interesting dynamic, then, isn't it, Professor Kotse? Because there are those just looking at the IFP, listening to the IFP's Mkulega Hlanga, very vociferously defending Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi on the fact that he is committed to the fact that he's standing down. And there are those who are saying the IFP couldn't have survived this election without him as the face of the campaign. And some even saying that the NFP lost support because of the illness of Magwaza Msibi. So how does that then play out? Are people still only having faith in a particular political figure?
I think so. If those examples that you've mentioned, plus, for example, General Olomisa in the case of the UDM, not so much the Freedom Front Plus. They had now already 3 different leaders. So there the personality or the figure of the leader is less prominent than these other parties. I think the important point from my side is that, yes, there are parties that are very much defined by identity, but there are certain limitations to that. They will never be able to become a real political player on the political spectrum or in the political spectrum of South Africa. Right. And that political parties, by definition, must be able to bring together different interests, cross-cutting interests, in order to ultimately reach a majority. And I think because of the nature.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Kotse. And Simpiwe did speak to the Freedom Front Plus about those exact issues. Let's go back to him. Simpiwe?
All right, thank you so much, Tsepi. So now, political analysts and pundits have been saying that looking at the scores that have been coming in so far, well, it does appear that the current status quo in South African politics will definitely remain the same. The ANC is leading in literally all the provinces apart from the Western Cape and on a national scale. But now let me bring the NEC member for the African National Congress, Mr. Ronald Lamola. Mr. Ronald Lamola, very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Good evening to you and to the viewers at home.
What's your reaction, first of all, to the current scores that we see on the board now?
No, it's clear that South Africans are giving confidence to the ANC. They are saying they need us to proceed with the project of renewal, of handling the job crisis and unemployment, resolving the issues around corruption. They also